With Chancellor Ba Shan's shout, a wall of light which was dozens of yards high and literally had no thickness appeared in front of them. This escarpment gave off an orange glow and had a width of 600 yards. There were strange markings covered all over it, and in the center of every marking was a burning star. There were a total of 36 patterns on the entire escarpment, and there were 36 flaming stars which looked like a star atlas. Just as Chancellor Ba Shan executed Heavenly Spirit's escarpment, cries of slaughter suddenly came in front of them as a battlefield came shifting towards them. Hundreds of divine arts practitioners came whizzing over as they sat on huge beasts that roared as they sped along and came face to face with this escarpment which popped out unexpectedly between the heaven and earth. The faces of those barbarian divine art practitioners turned pale white, and an old barbarian general with white hair shouted loudly, "Quick, crumble it!" Countless divine arts surged towards the escarpment and rumbles sounded out continuously. There were also flying swords which gave off ear-piercing screeches as they stabbed at the escarpment. However, the tips of the swords could often more than not penetrate through this escarpment before being fixed in place in the boundless escarpment. The swords could neither go forward nor be collected back. Hum hum hum. Heavenly Spirit's escarpment vibrated continuously from the attacks, and there were hundreds of swords that were added to the wall. At the back, there were still divine arts bursting forth and smashing the escarpment. Those few hundred barbarian divine arts practitioners collided onto the wall. This, plus the divine arts into the fray, made cracks begin to form continuously on this escarpment. Chancellor Ba Shan shouted as he pushed his hands forward again, and a hum was heard. Another Heavenly Spirit's escarpment was created which merged with the escarpment in front which had started cracking. The amount of pressure he was withstanding was unimaginable as he was constantly forced to retreat. Among these few hundred divine arts practitioners, there was no lack of strong practitioners of 7 stars realm, celestial being realm, and even life and death realm. With all of them cooperating and putting the pressure on him, it was already extremely terrifying for Chancellor Ba Shan to be able to use Heavenly Spirit's escarpment to contend against them, and not let them crush the escarpment. "Sacrifice the knife pellets!" that old general shouted sternly. Whoosh! Balls of knife pellets flew into the sky and spun in front of the escarpment. Suddenly, countless of knife lights shot towards the escarpment and the crisp clanking sounds rang incessantly. In a split second, the escarpment was completely pierced by over tens of thousands of treasure knives. Chancellor Ba Shan's expression changed hugely, and he moved back 10 steps from the pressure coming from the escarpment. His Heavenly Spirit's escarpment continued to shrink from being pressured by the terrifying power. "Junior brother princess, we're going to enter the barbarians' battlefield," Chancellor Ba Shan shouted. "Both of you be careful." Qin Mu's heart trembled slightly, and he suddenly heard the toot of a bugle horn from the depths of the prairie. Another army had managed to catch up in their chase. That old barbarian general was helpless and shouted sternly, "Face the enemies!" It was a huge army that had come chasing over, and it was formed up of most divine arts practitioners and martial arts practitioners of the barbarian tribe. Martial arts practitioners were foot soldiers, while divine arts practitioners were the cavalry that rode huge strange beasts. Other than that, there were also huge birds spreading their wings in the sky, and some soldiers from Barbarian D Empire were standing on the backs of the birds. However, they were all women that wore rainbow-colored feathers on their heads and threw spells and sharp swords downwards. Qin Mu looked through the escarpment and saw a barbarian general that had a majestic appearance sitting on a white elephant. That white elephant was a chunk taller than the other strange beasts, and was no inferior to this green bull that was under their feet. That young barbarian general swept his gaze over here, and revealed an astonished expression when he saw Heavenly Spirit's escarpment. He instantly regained his composure and shouted, "Wind!" A troop immediately came forward and took down the huge bottle gourds on their backs. Slamming them down heavily, they opened the mouths of the bottle gourds that were in front of them, and black air immediately rushed out from the huge bottle gourds. The black air turned into tornadoes which grew larger and larger, as if it was a dragon with its head in the sky and its tail on the ground, wreaking havoc wherever they swept across. Meanwhile, those officers who had released the wind immediately leaped into the sky and stepped on the wind direction to rush towards the old general's army, sweeping countless of divine arts practitioners into midair. When the soldiers of this barbarian tribe got swept into the sky, those officers made their moves on them and slashed at them with their knives, slaughtering the barbarian soldiers one by one. That general on the white elephant shouted deeply. Rain! Another troop rushed forward and placed down the earthen jars they were carrying on their backs. When they opened the lids, clouds of mist flew out from the jar. These barbarian officers rose into the air by stepping on the mist, and heavy rain came pouring down. These officers cast spells in the clouds, turning the raindrops into rain swords and stabbed them downwards. The barbarian soldiers below had no time to dodge, and their heads got pierced through by the raindrops, turning them into sieves. That young general shouted again. Thunder! The female barbarians on the backs of the huge birds started to beat their drums, which gave off rumblings of thunder. The thunder pounded down from above and causing the barbarian soldiers who were defending against the wind and rain to space out from the vibrations. This caused their defenses to subconsciously slack off, and more of them got swept into the wind and rain, dying on the spot. With the wind, rain and thunder, 3 troops casting their spells, there were not many barbarian soldiers that were left alive. Those that were left alive were all strong practitioners that could hardly be hurt by normal spells. That old barbarian general knew he wasn't a match for them and couldn't escape, thus he hurriedly kneeled on the floor and stated loudly, General Torimu, I surrender. I beg General Torimu to let me survive. Upon seeing this, the other 20+ strong practitioners of the barbarian tribe also knelt down, even though they were unwilling to do so. Surviving was more important to them. We're willing to surrender. A cold light flashed across the eyes of General Torimu as he sneered. You, the Tirmu tribe, tried to start a rebellion and you still want to live? Khan has ordered not to accept any surrender. The expression of that old general changed hugely, and was about to turn violent when that General Torimu stretched out his arm and pointed. A sword pillar that was as thick as a thumb stabbed through the air, and even though the two of them were 300 yards apart, that sword pillar arrived in a flash and absolutely didn't give that old general time to dodge it, penetrating through his skull directly. That sword pillar nailed itself onto the wall of light formed by heavenly spirit escarpment, and penetrated a tiny hole in this divine art of Chancellor Ba Shan. Chancellor Ba Shan raised his eyebrows and dispersed heavenly spirit's escarpment. They only saw the army of General Torimu slaughtering their way over as they slaughtered every single barbarian of the rebel army, leaving not even one alive. Most of the barbarian officers cut off the heads and hung them around their waists while cheering endlessly. There were still some that snatched the human heads and arguing who was the one that had killed them. Qin Mu frowned. Even if it was in great ruins, there was no social custom of snatching human heads. Collect all their souls and offer them to the Golden Palace. That General Torimu rode his white elephant forward and greeted Chancellor Ba Shan. Could that be Marshal Khan? Chancellor Ba Shan nodded his head. The eyes of General Torimu twinkled and was eager to give it a try. Marshal Khan blocked 800 divine arts practitioners with the power of one man. Your ability sure is extraordinary. However, you aren't as powerful as they have mentioned in the legends. It seems like your title of Marshal Khan can't be maintained anymore. Chancellor Ba Shan chuckled as he stood steadily on the bull. Radiance shot out from General Torimu's eyes as he suddenly stood up on the back of the elephant. The sword glow in his hand expanded sharply and his sword chi broke through the air as it stabbed towards Chancellor Ba Shan, covering the entire sky with sword lights in a split second. Chancellor Ba Shan stretched out his hand to pull out his knife and gave a slash. The sword lights suddenly vanished and only a knife was left slashing horizontally across the heaven and earth. A loud rumble sounded out and the knife light vanished, along with that General Torimu who was on the back of the elephant. There were still other barbarian generals standing on the white elephant and they were all shocked. They could only hear a long "ah" coming from behind them, and they hurriedly turned their heads back to see General Torimu flying further and further away. His ability is not bad. However, his discernment is lacking. Chancellor Ba Shan sheathed his knife and after a moment, General Torimu returned. The armor on his body had been split into 2 halves and his gaze had newfound respect when he looked toward Chancellor Ba Shan. Marshal Khan, your fame for fighting prowess has been passed down in the prairie until today. Torimu knelt down on one knee and placed his palm on his chest. Is Marshal Khan going to the Golden Palace? Grand Shaman has already given the order for us to treat Marshal Khan generously. Chancellor Ba Shan nodded his head. I understand, stand up. Back then Grand Shaman had conferred me the title of Marshal Khan. From the looks of it now, since he was the one who had conferred it, he naturally has to take it back personally. There should be more heroes appearing on your prairie, otherwise why would Grand Shaman look forward to me going forth to Roland's Golden Palace? Tormu stood up and said, "The heroes we have on our prairie are as many as the stars in the sky, therefore we naturally have people who could defeat Marshal Khan." Hulinger giggled. "This general, I like how you shoot the bull." "Shoot the bull? Who dares to shoot me?" The green bull sneered, and he suddenly saw that white elephant. He immediately moved closer to her and nudged the elephant's body while laughing mischievously. "White elephant, are you male or female?" That white elephant swung her trunk at it. The green bull ended it with his nose bloodied. "It's a female." Hulinger prone beside the green cow's ear and whispered. The green cow raised his spirits and chuckled at the white elephant. "Your skin is so white, I like you. Do you eat tree peony? I have some here. They're so tender you can squeeze water out from them." Tormu led the army to escort them to Roland's Golden Palace. Qin sized up this army and was slightly curious. The military strategy that this army had used to eliminate the rebel army was very unusual. It was very similar to Eternal Peace Empire's military strategy, therefore, he didn't know if it was Eternal Peace Empire who had learned the tactics of the barbarians or if it was the barbarians who had learned the tactics of Eternal Peace Empire. After one battle, Tormu respected them deeply and offered food and drinks on their journey, being extremely deferential to them. Chancellor Ba Shan didn't avoid him when he taught Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu the fusion of battle techniques and spells. However, when he taught them to the crucial parts, he would have to transmit his voice. 6 to 7 days later, they had come to the deepest part of the prairie, and they were not far from Roland's Golden Palace. Tormu didn't escort them anymore, and had instead led his army to return to their own tribe. Chancellor Ba Shan frowned and let out a murky breath. "It seems like Grand Shaman is pretty meticulous about my arrival. This time he will definitely take back the title of Marshal Khan. I'm afraid when I reach the Golden Palace, I'm the one who would be challenged. If that's the case, I would be too busy to steal back teacher's lower body." Qin Mu became eager to try and said, "Senior brother, I had learned before the methods of stealing." Chancellor Ba Shan shot a glance at him and shook his head. Roland's Golden Palace is the sacred grounds on the prairie, which is equivalent to the sacred grounds like Dao Sect, Great Thunderclap Monastery. There are countless of mechanism and all sorts of seals inside. Your methods of stealing are completely useless. You can't break or solve the seals and mechanism inside. The person who taught me to steal is very powerful," Qin Mu said seriously. "He's Grandpa Cripple of our village, even though he had lost a leg. However, Chancellor Ba Shan shook his hand and raised his spirits. "His leg was even chopped off by other people. This only means he is inept. You don't have to think about how to steal back teacher's lower body. I'll settle this matter. Both of you just have to keep your minds on blocking the mountain gate of Roland's Golden Palace. Leave the rest to me." He didn't give Qin Mu a chance to say his words and muttered, "I'm just afraid Grand Shaman, this fellow will play a shell game on me and find people to fight me one after another, keeping me busy and unable to get away. This is getting slightly difficult." Not long later, Roland's Golden Palace finally appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Qin Mu looked in the distance and saw a lake suddenly appearing in the boundless prairie. With bluish-green ripples undulating, the lake was so vast that it was like an ocean in the prairie. Qin Mu looked into the distance and could faintly see huge mountains extending forever into the distance. These mountains were wrapped in silver and piled up with snow. Meanwhile, in the middle of the towering mountains, there was a golden mountain shining gloriously. Qin Mu opened his heaven's eyes to take a look and finally saw that it wasn't a golden mountain but a golden palace in its glorious splendor. There were simply too many palace halls which completely covered the entire mountain. Therefore, from afar, it looked like a gold mountain. There was no fixed currency on the prairie, and only gold was accepted. Therefore, they had used the gold ingots that General Bian Jinyun had given to them to pay for their meals throughout the entire journey. To the commoners on the prairie, gold was very rare and had an extremely high value, and the palace here was constructed out of entirely gold. It showed how luxurious the Golden Palace was. Chancellor Ba Shan came to the lake and Qin Mu looked around. There was a wooden boat berthed there, and there was a man who grew horns on his head on the boat. He was dressed in black and stood at the bow of the boat while leaning on the bamboo pole used for rowing the boat. On the shallow water regions of the lake, there are also wooden poles stabbed there, and on every wooden pole, there was a decomposed head hanging on it. The shaman's soul collection skills are even more devilish than our heavenly saint cult. Qin Mu looked at that man, and the face of this man was like a mountain goat, although it was a brown mountain goat which was different from the usual white mountain goat. Furthermore, there was not much hair on his face. Goat-faced shaman? Qin Mu was slightly stunned. When he was in the capital city, he had treated a few soldiers who had suffered from shaman poison, and heard the soldier said that they had met a barbarian that grew horns on his head. That barbarian had used a mirror to reflect them, making them fall into a coma. Qin Mu had originally thought that the shaman had worn a mask, and now that he had seen the shaman on the wooden boat, only then did he know that there were actually barbarians that grew horns on their heads. That goat-faced shaman glanced at them and gave off a sharp voice. "Marshal Khan, Grand Shaman has waited for quite some time. Please board the boat." Chancellor Ba Shan boarded the boat and smiled. The water of this lake is weak water and has no buoyancy. Even feathers sink when they land on the surface of the river. We have to rely on the boat of Roland's Golden Palace to be able to cross. Let us get on the boat. Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu boarded the wooden ship along with the Green Bull and Hu Linger. The eyes of that shaman landed on Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu before sneering and pushing the boat over to the opposite shore. Ling Yuxiu smiled. "If we can't step on the weak water over, can't we walk around it? We can also fly across it." That barbarian shaman laughed sarcastically. "Fly over? You can try the air here and see if you can fly? The air here is dead." "The air is dead?" Ling Yuxiu asked puzzledly. The green cow beside her spoke in a low muffled voice. "The air here is indeed dead, you can't fly here." He was good at controlling the tempest, and he could feel that the air didn't flow at all. When a person breathes normally, air would circulate when they breathe in and out. If the air doesn't flow, the air under their nostrils would be emptied when they take in a breath, turning that space into a vacuum. When the air beside can't be resupplied to the area under the nostrils, one would naturally suffocate. This weak water lake was as such. The air above the lake was fixed in place by an ineffable power and wouldn't move at all. Only when the wooden boat slid forward, the people on the boat would move as well, so they wouldn't feel any peculiarity when they breathed. If the boat stopped, they would breathe in all the air under their nostrils, and when this went on for a period of time, they would definitely suffocate. If they executed skills of flying, it would be pretty impossible for them to fly above the lake. Skills of flying required one to vibrate the air to form an updraft. However, vibrating the air here would only form a vacuum, making one unable to fly. Hu Linger also gave it a try and discovered that the spells to call the wind and summon the rain were completely useless here. That barbarian shaman chuckled. "It's not impossible to walk around it. However, Weak Water Lake is too wide, and if you walk around it, it will take you 2 days. Furthermore, when you reach the snow mountains, there aren't many who can walk out of it." Ling Yuxiu was speechless. Qin Mu secretly opened his heaven's eyes and green heaven's eyes to look up at the sky. He could faintly see some indiscernible fog like muslin shrouding the entire sky above the lake, making his heart stirred slightly. I guess it should be this muslin which made the air unable to circulate? This thin muslin couldn't be touched yet, it really existed. This should be the restriction which Chancellor Ba Shan had mentioned. He inadvertently looked down into the water, and his heart trembled slightly. At the bottom of this lake were sets of white bones which made Ling Yuxiu gasp when she looked down. Chancellor Ba Shan said, "These are all the slaves used by the shaman cult to refine their spells." Qin Mu felt a bone-chilling cold. The goat-faced shaman rowed the boat rather quickly, as he had a unique secret method to travel around the surface of the lake like the wind. Even the weak water couldn't sink this boat. Not long later, the wooden boat berthed at the bottom of the snow mountain. That goat-faced shaman laughed mischievously. "Marshal Khan, please." Chancellor Ba Shan gave a smile and walked toward the Golden Mountain. Toot toot. A long and deep sound sounded out from the bugle horn. The sound was so deep and resounding that it vibrated the eardrums in resonance. In the distance, an avalanche suddenly happened on all the mountains, adding an imposing grandeur to it. Chancellor Ba Shan laughed out loudly and suppressed the rumbles given off by the bugle horn and avalanche. Qin Mu and the rest couldn't feel any abnormalities, but the qi and blood of the people on the mountain flared up from his laughter, and everyone had their blood rush to the heads, making them feel as if their heads were going to explode, yet they couldn't suppress it down. At this moment, a deep voice traveled out from the top of the mountain. The vigor of Marshal Khan's cultivation now has far surpassed the vigor of yours in those days. Was there a need to show off your strength the moment you have arrived? Marshal Khan, please come up the mountain and meet me. This voice sounded very clear among Chancellor Ba Shan's laughter. The voice was old yet was full of power, therefore, it was obvious he was also an exceptional expert. Grand Shaman's words, I naturally have no choice but to obey. However, the purpose of me coming today is to block your mountain gate and not to catch up on the past. Chancellor Ba Shan and the old voice spoke to each other leisurely from a distance. I'll go up the mountain right now. Qin Mu raised his head and saw a gold staircase laid all the way up to the mountain, and after walking up for a brief moment, there was a golden gate erected there, and the gate had no hinged barriers. This gate, which was formed from gold, was over 30 yards in height and over 60 yards in width. It was embedded with precious jades and precious pearls and really luxurious. Back then it was Butcher who had brought Chancellor Ba Shan here and blocked the gate for 3 months, defeating all the young talents of Roland's Golden Palace and the experts who had rushed in from every part of the prairie after they had heard the news. Thus Chancellor Ba Shan was honored as Martial Emperor by the prairie. Back then Butcher had also experienced 100 or so battles of all sizes and gave all the older generation of Roland's Golden Palace a beating, receiving the fame of Heaven Khan, the Heaven Emperor. Chancellor Ba Shan brought them to the front of the mountain gate and saw many shamans already waiting there. There were also strong practitioners of the prairie, and they were not the disciples of Roland's Golden Palace, but they were also guarding there. They must be the famous existences of the prairie, and had rushed over when they heard the news. Bull, bull! Chancellor Ba Shan gave a shout. The green bull moved deeply and his body suddenly swelled up. His muscles bulged and he grew taller and taller until he became a bullhead monster with a muscular human body. Taking great strides to the Golden Gate, he raised his shoulders upwards and uprooted that incomparably heavy mountain gate. The barbarian shamans and strong practitioners at the side were all dumbfounded. Chancellor Ba Shan said indifferently, "Bring the gate up the mountain." Qin Mu's heart slightly trembled as he knew Chancellor Ba Shan's intention. If they blocked the gate under the mountain, it would be difficult for them to enter the interior of Roland's Golden Palace. By carrying the gate up and blocking it in front of the main hall of Roland's Golden Palace, it would be much easier to steal the lower body of Butcher back. However, by doing this, he had completely offended Roland's Golden Palace. They would definitely fight to the last gasp. If they entered deep into Roland's Golden Palace, those strong practitioners just had to block the mountain path leading down and they would be trapped. In that case, they would be in a very bad situation. Chancellor Ba Shan gave a cold grunt and walked forward, transmitting his voice to Qin Mu's ears. After going up the mountain, it wouldn't be just you two blocking the mountain gate. They would probably make a move on me. Things are slightly different from what I have imagined. Qin Mu comforted him. The person who taught me stealing is a cripple. He's really powerful. How did he get crippled? Chancellor Ba Shan asked. Qin Mu hesitated and said honestly, it seems like he got one of his leg chopped off after getting caught stealing. Chancellor Ba Shan laughed grimly. When I heard that you said he was a cripple, I knew he got crippled after getting caught stealing. Have you stolen anything before? Qin Mu hesitated again and shook his head. I haven't tried yet. Chancellor Ba Shan completely lost his wishful thinking and his expression was mixed. Suddenly he stuffed a map to Qin Mu and said, "This is the geographic map of Roland's Golden Palace. Keep it with you first, however. I hope you won't have to use it. We'll have to take things step by step now. When we reach the Golden Palace, we'll have to adapt according to the situation. We just might be able to find the chance to steal back our master's lower body." The staircase of Roland's Golden Palace was extremely long and stretched all the way up to the mountain peak. Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu followed Chancellor Ba Shan up the mountain and looked around. He could see numerous golden, bright, and dazzling statues of gods. Each and every statue looked extremely weird. They were human and yet not human, devil and yet not devil, god and yet not god. They had the characteristics of human, devil and god all at the same time, having all kinds of variations in their appearances. Walking on this kind of road, it made people feel even more stifling, and even Hu Linger, who liked to squabble the green bull, had quieted down. Only the green bull incomparably heavy footsteps could be heard. Qin Mu looked back and the eyes of the strong practitioners and the shamans were spewing fire as they followed them without a word. In front, numerous golden, bright and dazzling palaces appeared. and there were some strange and weirdly shaped humans standing under these palaces. Some of them had horns on their heads and some had wings on their backs. There were some that had heads of beasts and some that grew tails of snakes. Yet, on the contrary, they weren't the demon race. The demon race had a demon air around, for example. Hulinger had demon air, and even though the demon air of the Green Bull was very faint, he still had it after all. Meanwhile, these mutants had no demon air. Hulinger and the Green Bull were transforming in the direction of a human, whereas the strong practitioners of Roland's Golden Palace were transforming in the directions of a non-human. That was a different cultivation mentality between Eternal Peace and Beyond the Great Wall. Transforming to a non-human and becoming closer to devil and god meant shaman. However, there were also some people looked like ordinary humans. These people should be able to control their bodies and transform freely using their divine arts. There were also numerous cages in front of the hall which were stuffed with humans in ragged clothing. They should be the ingredients that the shamans of Roland's Golden Palace used for practicing their techniques. Ling Yuxiu's expression changed slightly and got angry. "Those are the people of our Eternal Peace Empire," Qin Mu said nonchalantly. "Eternal Peace Empire has also captured the people of my great ruins and treated them as slaves." Ling Yuxiu's body trembled and she kept silent. "Young master, they not only use humans to practice their techniques, they also capture demons." Hulinger stuck her nose out and Qin Mu looked over in the direction to see some demons getting locked in a few cages. Chancellor Ba Shan said, "The shaman cult has an unusual technique that could use souls to cultivate, to use them to change their body structures. For example, by absorbing bird souls, they could grow wings or even replace their heads with birds' heads. By absorbing the souls of goats, their bodies could transform to goats. Those who manage to cultivate divine arts are called great shamans, while those that haven't are called shamans. Those who reach celestial being realm are called shaman kings. Roland's Golden Palace is the sacred grounds of the shaman cult, and their technique is called Grand Shaman Ruta Scriptures, which is pretty extraordinary. When they came to the peak of the mountain, they could see the lavishness of this place. The buildings and palaces were all shining brilliant with golden light, and the pillar of the main hall was so thick that it required 2 men to wrap their arms around it. There were even more golden statues of gods, and numerous barbarians stood under the golden statues of gods. Suddenly a golden statue moved and Qin Mu's heart leaped. Now then he knew that these were not golden statues of gods but great shamans. The great shamans of Roland's Golden Palace actually refined their bodies like pure gold, radiating off golden light. In front of the Golden Palace and under the towering gate, the great shamans were like gods shining brilliantly in golden light, solemn and dignified. In the lead was an elder that had golden hair and a golden body which was tall and sturdy. He wore golden clothes and held a scepter in his hand. With a feathered crown on his head, he asked with a resounding voice, "Marshal Khan, you have been free and unfettered for so many years. Why have you delivered yourself to our gate now?" "Deliver to your gate is a good word. Green Bull, put down the mountain gate." The Green Bull put down the mountain gate with a crash and Chancellor Ba Shan laughed loudly. "Grand Shaman, I've delivered the mountain gate. Most of these golden senior brothers seem to have been beaten by me before. When I blocked the gate for 100 days back then, I injured and killed many people. I couldn't hold back when fighting the strong ones, therefore I could only kill them while the weak ones had all survived in my hands. These weak ones are the ones present here." The moment he said that, the entire mountain immediately broke into an uproar. All the strong practitioners of the older generation in Roland's Golden Palace were unable to restrain their anger, saturating the air in an awful atmosphere. Chancellor Ba Shan was sharp-tongued and instantly offended every single expert of Roland's Golden Palace, provoking everyone's anger. Plus the fact that he had carried the mountain gate up the mountain, it would definitely be hard for them to leave the matter at that. One of the great shamans had a solemn expression and sneered with his voice that was like metal striking stone. "Our injuries were long healed. Over these years, our Golden Palace has been honing our strength and we awfully wish to exchange blows with Marshal Khan once more to erase our shame." Chancellor Ba Shan gave a smile. "You'll have the chance. However, this time, I'm here to block the gate and not to beat you to death." He brought Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu forward and came to the gate of the Golden Palace. He raised his head to size up this mountain gate and recalled the past, sighing ruefully. "Back then I had followed teacher to the bottom of this mountain gate and beat many people to death. The eyes of the great shamans that were shining brilliantly like gods spewed fire as they stared at them. Chancellor Ba Shan looked back and winked at Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu. "And now, I'll leave this mountain gate to you too." Ling Yuxiu was slightly worried and said softly, "Teacher, the rules here seem to be different from eternal peace." Chancellor Ba Shan had a smile on his face and said with a soft voice, "Dao Sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery coming to Imperial College to block the gate is merely to compete against us and doesn't concern life and death. After fighting, everyone is still polite and amiable. As for this place, everyone fights to the death. You can leave the opponent alive, but if you meet experts of the same level, you'll have to kill them because it would be hard for you to go easy on them. Back then I had met many experts who were on the same level as me. And that's why many people had died." Ling Yuxiu's scalp turned numb. Qin Mu also composed himself and took in a long breath. Finally, it was the rules of Great Ruins. Great Ruins had the same rules. Grand Shaman walked over and came to the bottom of the Golden Mountain Gate. His gaze landed on Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu while speaking neither too fast nor too slow. "We go with the previous rule for blocking the gate, fighting regardless of life and death. Other than that, I will also have to take back the title of Marshal Khan, regardless of life and death." Chancellor Ba Shan's expression didn't change and said clearly, "Everyone, their cultivation is at 5 elements realm. We understand the rules of blocking the gate." Grand Shaman's expression remained impervious to emotions and knocked his scepter. "Listen up, disciples of the Golden Palace. Compete with them on 5 elements realm and fight regardless of life and death. Whoever dares to go past 5 elements realm, I'll take your life." His voice wasn't loud, but it had spread throughout the entire mountain. Once Grand Shaman had said it, he immediately looked at Chancellor Ba Shan and gave a smile. "Marshal Khan, back then Heaven Khan had brought you forward to our Golden Palace to block our gate. Heaven Khan's remarkable abilities were boundless and naturally commanded respect. However, you're not Heaven Khan." Chancellor Ba Shan's expression turned grim as he walked through the mountain gate, and his voice penetrated through Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu's mind. "Junior brother, princess, don't worry. As long as they don't kill me, they will still challenge you according to the rules. If I'm killed by them, then you too will be in danger." The hearts of Ling Yuxiu and Qin Mu shivered. Their safety depended on the life of Chancellor Ba Shan. If Chancellor Ba Shan was stripped of the title of Marshal Khan and was gotten rid of and Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu were killed, no one would leak any news. This way, there would be no harm to Roland's Golden Palace's reputation, and the outside world wouldn't know about this challenge. The strong practitioner of the prairie were all under the rule of Roland's Golden Palace, and as long as Roland's Golden Palace gave the order, they would definitely not say anything out. If they let Chancellor Ba Shan leave Roland's Golden Palace alive, this matter would definitely be spread out by Ba Shan this loud mouth. Not only would the entire prairie know about it, even the whole world would know about it. Chancellor Ba Shan definitely had this ability. When that time came, Roland's Golden Palace's reputation would be totally lost. Therefore, before Chancellor Ba Shan dies, Roland's Golden Palace would definitely not gang up on Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu, but settle this matter according to the rules. "Old master, don't get beaten to death," the Green Bull said loudly. Chancellor Ba Shan stumbled and turned his back in anger. "We'll be having beef after we go back." The Green Bull immediately shrank back his head. Two youths with daring guts. "Do you know you're blocking the gate of a sacred ground?" Suddenly a voice came behind Qin Mu. Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu stood up and looked down the mountain only to see numerous weird-looking shamans walking up to block the path that was leading up. One of the shamans took a stride forward and his body gave off a faint golden glow. He grew horns on his head, wings on his back and a beak on his mouth. This kind of cultivation method which transformed one into a non-human was indeed rarely seen. "Senior brother," Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu greeted. Yet that shaman of the Golden Palace didn't return their greetings and said with a resounding voice, "Etiquette is something that belongs to your eternal peace empire. Our Roland's Golden Palace doesn't have that many rules. After killing both of you, I'll absorb your souls to cultivate my divine arts. People like you are much stronger than those slaves and your souls are also incomparably tenacious. It couldn't be better to use them to cultivate my divine arts." Qin Mu's gaze wavered and said, "Sister, let me go first. I'll test their techniques and divine arts." Ling Yuxiu nodded her head. Even though her abilities had rapid improvement along the journey, there was still some gap between her and Qin Mu. Not knowing the ins and outs of a shaman could make them easily be at a disadvantage fighting them. Qin Mu let out a murky breath and said solemnly, "Green Bull, bring my backpack over." The Green Bull came forward and took down the backpack on his back. Qin Mu first placed the knife sheaths on his back, crisscrossing the two pigs slaughtering knives. He then put on his sword case behind the knife sheaths, hang his big iron hammer, stuck in a bamboo cane and wore Junior Protector sword on his waist. The Green Bull leaked murderous intent and asked, "I've heard you had hurt cows in the past. If you can't even beat me, can you beat them?" Qin Mu stretched his body and his body crackled while saying indifferently, "I'm an overlord body." The Green Bull shouted, "My old master has never been defeated under this golden palace." Qin Mu had a nonchalant expression, "I'm a natural-born overlord body. In the whole world, no one can win me in the same realm." That bird-wing shaman took out 2 golden pestles and his eyes sparkled as he laughed. "What bullshit is an overlord body? I've never heard it before." Qin Mu moved his vital chi with Overlord Body 3 elixir technique, causing his vital chi to circulate in an explosive speed, spreading throughout his entire body in a split second. "I Overlord Body." He raised his foot and a deep footprint was indented on the golden floor under his foot. Boom! His entire body rushed towards that bird-wing shaman at such a fast speed that others could only see a series of afterimages. The matchless Overlord Body. The expression of the bird-wing shaman changed hugely and he hurriedly flapped his wings. However, before he could even rise to the sky, he saw Qin Mu's fist smashing over. With the roars of a dragon, his pupils suddenly contracted as he saw a fierce-looking dragon's head instead of a fist. The next instant he saw 2 dragons' heads, followed by 3 then 4. His wings flapped as he wanted to avoid them but it was already too late. In a hurry, he could only use the golden pestles to block his front. The 2 golden pestles suddenly bent and the force of Qin Mu's punch actually smashed these 2 spirit weapons into a thin paper, as they were made of mud. Whoosh! That bird-wing shaman rose into the sky and turned into a blood fog as he exploded with a bang. From the blood fog came roars of dragons and the blood fog turned into 45 fierce-looking dragons. It was as if it was these 45 blood dragons and not Qin Mu's fist that had blown this bird-wing shaman into pieces. Meanwhile, on the golden stage in front of the mountain gate, Qin Mu suddenly calmed down from an incomparably intense movement. His violent vital chi had also suddenly quietened down and his face turned serene. "Green Bull, your old master need 100 days to defeat Roland's golden palace." Qin Mu turned around and looked at the shamans below the golden stage with a cold gaze. "And I only need a day." He stood under the gate and his voice was like the rumbling of thunder, resounding throughout the entire Roland's golden palace. "I just need 1 day and I can crush the spirit of all the disciples of Roland's golden palace, crumble all their pride and step their dignity under my feet." Presumptuous! A shaman erupted into anger and sprinted frantically towards Qin Mu. As he ran, his body underwent a complete transformation. His scalp and skin scattered in all directions and he grew an elephant's head. His body grew taller and more muscular, shredding the shirt on his body into pieces while his limbs grew as thick as an elephant's legs. Golden glow emanated out from his elephant head and his human body as if he was like a god who had revived with sacrifice, possessing boundless strength. His cultivation and ability were obviously much stronger than the bird-wing shaman. That bird-wing shaman's body had not turned golden yet, while this shaman's body was like it was made of gold. Boom! A huge cauldron-like fist smashed towards Qin Mu and his fist vibrated the air, caused thunderclaps to burst forth. The pure white air rings burst forth in all directions. Behind Qin Mu, Hu Linger's snow-white fur fluttered backward from the gust of wind, along with Ling Yuxiu's beautiful hair. "Die!" That elephant head shaman bellowed. Qin Mu leaped and avoided this incomparably overbearing punch from the side. Carrying his knives on both hands, he rushed to the front of the elephant head shaman with his knife lights lighting up. Raising the knife from forbidden, Qin Mu rose into the sky and somersaulted backward. When he landed, he sheathed both his knives back. Meanwhile, that elephant head shaman's huge body split into halves and rolled down the mountain, staining the golden staircase red. A shaman's eyes turned red with fury and suddenly pulled out a black banner to rush at Qin Mu, shouting sternly, "I'm going to refine your soul, die!" Qin Mu used heavenly devil nature technique to seal his souls and spirits. Raising his hand in one finger, the sword case on his back opened up and a flying sword gave a piercing screech as it pierced through the heart of the shaman's brows. Qin Mu's finger flicked up and the flying sword whooshed back, returning to his sword case with a trail of blood light. Kill! A female shaman with a leopard's head and a leopard's tail raised a mirror, pointing it toward Qin Mu, causing malevolent souls to appear in that mirror. Ding! A flying sword suddenly appeared in front of the mirror which tried to pierce through it. However, the surface of the mirror was incomparably solid and actually managed to block this flying sword. But the next moment, the sword span and changed into drill sword form to pierce through the bronze mirror. The sword light shattered the mirror and pierced through the female shaman. What's so scary about shaman poison? Qin Mu's clothes fluttered in the wind and he raised his hand to retrieve his sword. Another shaman grew fur, claws and tail of a tiger and pounced forward. He raised a gale as he pounced forward, not giving Qin Mu a chance to draw his sword. Qin Mu punched sideways and both of them moved irregularly, resulting in endless sounds of collisions. That shaman shook his head and grew out a tiger's head, giving out a thunderous roar continuously to bombard Qin Mu's souls and spirits. Qin Mu used his fists as a madra and punched out sunshine refining Yang's soul in the sky. Spreading his 5 fingers outwards, he unleashed heavenly devil freedom madra. His fist and palm changed repeatedly, alternating between the path of Buddha and devil. The shaman's tiger roar only managed to sound 3 times before his souls and spirits got smashed into pieces, collapsing on the floor. Another great shaman of 6 directions realm suddenly pounced out, and his cultivation was even stronger than the previous ones. He could use his divine arts freely and maintain the appearance and form of a normal human. Even though he had sealed his 6 directions divine treasure, the moment he executed his technique, he immediately turned into a violent ape that wielded a golden club which was as thick as a pillar. With his boundless strength, he could sweep 1,000 army troops while still being extremely agile. Qin Mu stretched his hand to pull out his bamboo cane, and used his bamboo cane to face the golden club. The two of them clashed like lightning and suddenly the golden club stopped. The shaman revealed an astonished expression when his chest got tapped by the cane. However, he was still a great shaman of 6 directions realm and not just a shaman. He immediately unsealed his 6 directions divine treasure, and just as he had unsealed his divine treasure, his heart got pierced by the bamboo cane, causing his corpse to collapse on the floor. Qin Mu pulled out the bamboo cane from his heart. Great shamans of 6 direction realm were called divine arts practitioners in eternal peace. However, the only difference was how they had called them. There was actually not much difference between them. If this divine arts practitioner didn't seal his 6 direction divine treasure, it would be hard for Qin Mu to kill him. However, as long as they were in the same realm as Qin Mu, he would have the ability to kill his opponent, no matter if they were of 6 directions realm or 7 stars realm. Dong! A golden strong man suddenly jumped onto the golden stage and landed heavily. On his back was a knife sheath that was over 1.5 human tall. He suddenly roared at Qin Mu and knife lights swooshed out from his knife sheath and causing a sky full of knife shadows to crash towards Qin Mu. At the same time, the golden strong man wielded knives on both hands, slashing them towards Qin Mu. The 2 knives were sometimes forward and sometimes backward, just like 2 huge pythons that were coiling him and rolling towards Qin Mu. Qin Mu held a pig slaughtering knife in a normal grip and held the other pig slaughtering knife in a reverse grip while the flying swords flew out from the sword case on his back and faced the knife lights that were slashing downwards. Every cloud has a silver lining. Their bodies were one big and one small as the golden strong man was half a body taller than Qin Mu. As the 2 of them clashed together, there were 2 knife lights, one vertical and one horizontal. The horizontal one was the mountain that blocked the path forward while the vertical one was the knife that split the mountain. The blood-red knife lights rose into the sky as if it was a giant swinging his knives and splitting a path out from the mountain cliff. That golden strong man's body was split into 4 pieces, and was slain by this vertical and horizontal knife lights. Qin Mu trembled his knife and shook off the blood on the knife. Holding both knives in a reverse grip, he sheathed them back. Suddenly he raised his hand and pointed, causing a flying sword to fly out of its sheath and penetrated through the heart of a shaman's brows who was trying to shoot him with a bow. Kill him and take revenge for our senior and junior brothers. There were still shamans who continuously poured forward and Qin Mu evaded them, twisting his body to give a back kick. He also used knife, sword, fists, and legs to slay every single one of the shaman who came to challenge him. After a moment, there was no more sound in the surroundings. In front of the mountain gate of Roland's golden palace, there were over 40 bodies lying scattered on the golden staircase. Qin Mu looked down the stage, and below the stage were terrified faces and frightened eyes. When their gazes came into contact with his, they would avoid it and not dare to look at him. These shamans were strong-willed, however. After Qin Mu had killed over 40 people continuously, the spirit and will have unavoidably weakened. As long as it was weakened, it would continue on and grow into fear, the fear of being unable to defeat the opponent, which would make them fear and respect Qin Mu. What Qin Mu had seen along this road had made him harbored resent against Roland's golden palace. When General Tormu had ordered the soldiers to collect the souls of the rebel army in order to offer them to Roland's golden palace, he was still puzzled at that time. Now then he realized that Roland's golden palace actually used souls to cultivate. This time he had come to take back Butcher's lower body and not to block the gate. Since enmity between them had already been opened, he would just have to destroy the spirit and will of this sect, to crush their confidence in pieces and step on their techniques and skills. This was to let them know that their divine arts that used human souls to cultivate were worthless. Which of you have cultivated Grand Shaman Ruda scriptures? Qin Mu looked around with a cold expression, and his lips slowly curled into a smile. Come out, I would like to kill one. Silence fell in front of the mountain gate. Behind the mountain gate, the expression of the gold-like great shamans gradually turned black in Roland's golden palace. After a moment, a youth walked out, and a middle-aged great shaman said in a deep voice, Samuro, his weakness is at the second part of his left shoulder blade. This is the weakness of his technique, which he couldn't cultivate. That young great shaman replied solemnly, I've already noticed it, but I couldn't determine its exact location. Shaman King, much thanks for pointing it out. Chancellor Bashan's face sank and sneered. Shaman King, as a senior, isn't what you're doing a little despicable? Marshal Khan, please. That middle-aged great shaman acted blur and raised his hand. Back then I was defeated under your hands, and I pondered over the painful experience, resulting in my cultivation to improve rapidly these few years. I have always wanted to erase my past shame, and the heavens must have taken pity on me to finally send you back. Chancellor Bashan suddenly rose into the air and gave off a glow that was like a huge knife which was 300 yards long and could split the sky. He moved far away, and his voice came from a distance. The cultivations of these people here are too low. I'm afraid they would die from the vibration from our clash. We shall fight on the snow mountains. That middle-aged great shaman looked at the grand shaman, who stood up and said, Go! Swoosh! Rays of golden light broke through the sky and chased after that knife light, which sprinted straight to the snow mountains. Among the majestic mountains and boundless white snow, golden light suddenly broke out and melted the snow. In the golden light, there were snow-white knife lights flashing by. And that was the place where the world-shaking battle was going on. However, when it traveled to Roland's golden palace, only weak wave motions were left. Under the mountain gate of the golden palace, Qin Mu turned around and looked at Samuro, who was walking down from the sacred hall of the golden palace. Chancellor Bashan had lured most of the experts in Roland's golden palace away, which probably made it easier for him to find the lower half of Butcher's body. However, there were still a few senior experts left in from of the sacred hall. Samuro had a grave expression, but his gaze revealed slight excitement. His body was also gold in color. When Qin Mu was exchanging blows with these shamans, he was observing from the side. Other than trying to discover if Qin Mu had a weakness, the reason why he didn't go forward right away was to let these shamans fight Qin Mu one after another to exhaust Qin Mu's cultivation, giving him a greater chance of victory. Now that he had already found Qin Mu's weakness and Qin Mu had defeated over 40 people in a row, his chance had come. Qin Mu's expression was like an old well that had no ripple as he sat there calmly, as though he had not just experienced over 40 fierce battles. Suddenly, both of their bodies moved at the same time. Vital Qi burst forth under Qin Mu's feet, giving him an extremely fast speed which brought him straight to Samuro's face in an instant as he unleashed a punch. Spring thunder on the lonely East Sea. Samuro received a punch from him, however. The sounds of a huge bell burst forth from his body. Qin Mu immediately felt his fist force, which was like the churning river surging into the sea, hitting something like a bronze and iron wall, making not even the slightest force pass through. It was as if Samuro's body was crafted out from the hardest metal, and the kind that was very solid. Samuro's body swayed and he suddenly turned into a human that grew a bird's head and wings. The pair of wings on his back were shining brilliantly in golden light and were formed by countless of gold swords. The gold swords hummed and sliced forward. Qin Mu evaded and retreated while the flying swords flew out from the sword case on his back to face the sword feathers that were slashing over. Suddenly he noticed that the two wings of Samuro were different from ordinary. Between every sword-shaped feathers, there was vital chi connecting them together, which made his heart shudder, and he knew that it was bad instantly. Whoosh! The sharp swords which formed Samuro's wings suddenly burst apart and flew out from the wings, stabbing towards Qin Mu in all directions. On these golden swords there were actually pitch-black eyeballs which rolled around, making them look strange and eerie. There was a spirit trapped within every single one of these swords, which had become the spirit of the sword. Qin Mu's gaze landed on those eyes and suddenly felt giddy. He knew it was bad and immediately closed his eyes while pulling out his knives. Midnight battle across stormy cities. His knife lights moved fast and nimbly as they surrounded his entire body to deflect the golden swords continuously. Midnight battle across stormy cities had the two words midnight battle, which already meant that this move didn't require one to use their eyes to see the surroundings. Samuro's swords were extremely peculiar, and when one's gaze landed on his swords, they would have fallen into his trap. Therefore, it was the correct decision to use this move. Grand Shaman Ruda scriptures sure is extraordinary. It's very demonic. The knives in Qin Mu's hands clashed with the opponent's swords, and he immediately felt that the power in the opponent's swords was inferior to his. The strong point of battle technique school lay in the weapons that one wielded, which could unleash all of their strength. Samuro's golden swords were forced back by midnight battle across stormy cities and returned to his side, turning back into a pair of wings. With his wings swinging, he blocked down all of the sharp swords which Qin Mu had shot from his sword case. Suddenly, both of Qin Mu's knives left his hands as he gave a punch which was like a huge sun in the sky, shining on the young soul. Samuro got shown by his fist skill, causing his mind to waver slightly. However, his moves weren't the least affected, although the eyes on his swords closed from the piercing sunlight and gave off miserable screams as they turned into green smoke. Qin Mu executed Freedom Madra with his other hand, yet Samuro remained unmoved. Grand Shaman Ruda scriptures had used other people's souls as cultivation ingredients, and refined his own souls to be incomparably stable. His body was also incomparably tough that even Thunderclap 8 strikes can't shake him up. Qin Mu frowned slightly and suddenly pointed a finger out. 36 swords flew out from the sword case and merged together to form drill sword form as they stabbed towards Samuro. Samuro's wings swung up and down in front of his body, and the swords that formed his wings continuously changed their positions, trying to block Qin Mu's attacks. However, the next moment drill sword form had broken through the defense of his wings. Samuro was startled and felt a pain in his chest. His golden body was actually unable to block drill sword form. He immediately flapped his wings and rose into the sky while raising a gale. Whoosh! Just as the gale brewed, Qin Mu immediately stepped on the wind and moved. Samuro gave an alarmed expression. The speed of Qin Mu sprinting in the sky was actually even faster than him flapping his wings to fly. Cripple's heaven-pilfering leg skills had matchless speed in the world. If he didn't flap his wings to raise a gale, it would be hard for Qin Mu to catch up to him in the sky, but with the gale together, the air was like a flat ground to Qin Mu. Go! Samuro shouted, and the golden swords flew out from the wings on his back, stabbing towards Qin Mu and trying to prevent him from closing up on him. His wings were emptied out in an instant and only 2 golden fleshy wings were left. His figure immediately crashed towards the ground. At this moment, the knife lights were like waterfall colliding with the golden swords that rapidly stabbing over. A piercing sound sounded out when a golden sword broke through Qin Mu's waterfall and stabbed on his left shoulder, which was precisely at the second part of his shoulder blade. Meanwhile, Qin Mu's body had also come to the front of Samuro and passed by him, smearing a snow-bright knife light across Samuro's neck. That knife light was very thin, and it seemed like it had cut through Samuro's neck before coming out from the back. However, it also seemed like it didn't give him any injuries at all. Samuro landed on the ground and the golden swords came clattering back, forming 2 wings on his back. Those 2 golden wings spread open and shot off golden rays in every direction. "Well done, senior brother Samuro!" A voice cried out in surprise and delight. The morale of the other shamans was boosted and they all shouted, "Senior brother Samuro, screw this slave of eternal peace." The people of eternal peace are all 2-legged goats. They're only worth to be used for cultivation and are unworthy to live in this world. Qinmu landed on the ground and the flying swords flew back one by one into his sword case. The youth pulled out the golden sword from his shoulder and threw it on the ground. The clothes on his body were still perfectly fine. When this sword had come stabbing over, it was blocked by this embroidered clothes. However, the sword had stabbed into his shoulder blade along with his clothes. What was called impervious to swords and spears actually couldn't block swords and spears completely. Even though his clothes made from 6 wings golden natural silk had managed to block the golden sword, he was still injured. Under the golden stage, cheers erupted. Meanwhile, Samuro was still spreading his wings open majestically, as if he was enjoying the cheers of everyone. Qinmu walked forward and the cheers gradually softened. Qinmu raised his hands and sheathed both his knives and came to Samuro's side. However, Samuro didn't move at all and continued to spread his golden wings without putting up any guard. Qinmu raised his hand and grabbed his hair, pulling it up gently. Plucking his head off his neck, he threw it down the stage. The cheers below the golden stage grew softer and softer. Only the shamans that were far away that couldn't see this scene were still cheering, sounding several times piercing to the ears. When the head rolled down from the stage and to the shaman's feet, the cheers were gone. Samuro, who had cultivated the grand shaman Ruda scriptures, also died. Right when victory was at hand, his head was severed by Qinmu. Ling Yuxiu hurried forward and wanted to bind up his wound. Qinmu shook his hand and said, "It's fine. I said I have to crush their will, so I must do it. You can be at ease." Ling Yuxiu frowned slightly and felt that Qinmu was slightly overconfident. "Cowherd, your shoulder is injured. The weakness on your shoulder would only grow bigger. If another great shaman who cultivates grand shaman Ruda scriptures appears." Just as she had said so, another young great shaman suddenly walked out from the sacred hall of Roland's golden palace. Giving a smile on his face, he said, "Junior brother Samuro is still too inexperienced and not calm enough. That's why he has died. I, Dambaro of 6 Directions Realm, will seal my 6 Directions divine treasure." Qinmu's expression turned solemn and his body floated backward. His feet tapped rapidly and leaped onto the roof of the golden palace hall. Dambaro laughed loudly and chased him like a shadow. He wielded a big hammer and the head of the hammer was a giant skull. The skull had a dark gold color, and there were actually 7 bone spikes growing out from the skull. On each of the bone spikes there was a small skull that was the size of the fist. In the eye sockets of these 8 heads, there were actually eyes inside that made them very terrifying. Even though the head of the hammer was huge, the handle was very short and could barely fit in his hand. Dambaro gently swung his hammer, and the 7 smaller skulls immediately opened up their eyes. The eyeballs rolled around inside the sockets and they suddenly opened up their mouths to spew out black smoke from the mouths of skulls. 7 trails of smoke traveled back and forth, rushing like black dragons toward Qinmu, who was on top of the golden palace hall. Sharp swords flew out from Qinmu's sword case. With the flick of his swords, he severed the heads of the black dragons. However, he lost control of his flying sword in the next moment, and they dropped to the floor with a clank. The 7 flying swords landed on top of the golden palace hall and clanked as they bounced. In the sword, there was black qi shuttling back and forth. Qinmu instantly felt his vital qi getting tainted and he was startled. Grand Shaman Ruda scriptures seemed to be as all-embracing as great educational heavenly devil scriptures, as it had not only one kind of techniques. For example, what Samuro had cultivated was one type, taking the path of sword skill divine arts. Meanwhile, Dambaro had cultivated another type, taking the path of spell divine arts. Even though both of them had cultivated Grand Shaman Ruda scriptures, the paths they took were different. Qinmu evaded and the golden tiles of the golden palace hall exploded as the black dragons tunneled in and out of the golden palace halls as they attacked him. The 2 figures leaped up like a rabbit and soared down like a falcon, sprinting on top of the golden palace hall. Even the walls were like flat ground to them. Suddenly Qin Mu's body sank and he fell into that golden palace hall. Danbaro sneered and swung his big hammer to break open the golden palace hall to rush in. Bang! A human figure rushed into the sky and waved his hand to stab backward with his flying swords. Meanwhile, Danbaro followed closely after him as he stepped on a trail of black smoke. The black smoke continuously surged forward as he slaughtered towards Qin Mu. Qin Mu crashed through the golden palace hall with a bang, and entered another palace hall to avoid Danbaro's attacks. Danbaro followed behind aggressively, making the shamans and great shamans of Roland's golden palace blew off steam and swept away their depressed moods. The two of them sprinted of the golden palace halls and attacked each other mercilessly, moving further and further away from the mountain gate. Danbaro's confidence grew stronger and stronger, causing his attacks to become more and more fierce. When Qin Mu had landed into a golden palace hall, he rushed into it straight away only to face magnificent mountains and rivers coming towards him. Sword-treading mountains and rivers. Danbaro felt as if he was rapidly growing smaller as he landed into that piece of mountains and rivers, making him flustered. In front of the mountain gate, everyone looked nervously at the golden palace hall which both of them had landed in. After a moment, a golden figure suddenly leaped out from the golden palace hall and stood on the roof while holding a bone hammer. In his other hand he raised a head high up in the sky. Everyone in Roland's golden palace erupted into deafening cheers while Ling Yuxiu's face turned ghastly white, seemingly out of her wits. The green bull also stared blankly along with Hu Linger. The one that herds the cow is dead. Ling Yuxiu's mind was completely blank. In front of the sacred hall, those few shaman kings gave a rare smile and looked at one another before nodding their heads gently. Danbaro is not bad, ruthless and steady. He's a great talent that surpasses normal talent. An old shaman king asked in astonishment, "Why isn't he going back to the sacred hall?" Danbaro brought that head and jumped back into the golden palace, not returning to the mountain gate. Another shaman king smiled. He's most likely injured. Danbaro has a careful nature, and would definitely recuperate himself once he is injured so as not to leave any hidden danger. This is also why we have high hopes for him. Now it's only this young girl left who would soon die as well. I wonder how's the situation in the mountains. The few shaman kings had the desire to check out the situation of the battle, but they were ordered to stay here to guard the sacred hall and not to leave. In that golden hall, Danbaro threw away that head and took out a scroll, opening it up gently to take a careful look. Roland's golden palace's treasury is right beside this main hall. I have not come to the wrong place. He closed the geographic map of Roland's golden palace and stood up to leave. Suddenly he felt a sharp pain on his shoulder and hurriedly took out a jade bottle. Taking a look, he put it back into his sleeves, almost taken out lost fragrance. He took out another jade bottle and carefully poured some dragon saliva out to smear it on the wound on his shoulder, which was quickly healed without causing any more pain. Danbaro put back his jade bottle and thought for a while. He took Junior Protector's sword in his hand and walked out of this golden palace hall, and came to another great hall in a few steps. In front of that great hall, a tortoise-back golden man was wielding an axe to guard the place. He had a frog's mouth and a golden tortoise shell on his back, looking courageous and strong. When he saw him walking over, he asked in astonishment, "Danbaro, what are you doing here?" The golden color on his body was even denser than Danbaro, but it was still fainter than those shaman kings. His position and ability should be inferior to a shaman king. Disciple killed the hoodlum that came to block our gate and received a treasured sword. I don't dare to keep it for myself and decide to offer it up to the sacred cult. Danbaro offered up Junior Protector's sword with both his hands and smiled. I don't cultivate swords, so even though this sword is good, it's useless to me. Therefore I would like to use this treasure to swap for another treasure. That tortoise-back guard took over Junior Protector's sword and pulled it out with a schwang, squinting his eyes from the cold reflection as he cried out in astonishment, "Superb sword! There aren't many treasures in Roland's golden palace which could be equivalent to this sword. You actually received such a remarkable treasure. Grand Shaman will definitely reward you." He pulled open the door to the hall and Danbaro immediately asked, "Can Disciple go in to choose a treasure?" The tortoise-back guard gave some thought and smiled. "It may not be a bad idea. You have done a great deed and offered up such a treasure. Grand Shaman will definitely reward you well. However, when you come in, You can only see the treasures kept in our Roland's golden palace and can't take it away. When Grand Shaman rewards you and unseals the seal, only then can you take it. Donghua was elated and immediately followed him into this golden palace hall. The tortoise-back guard stood in the middle of the hall and carefully opened up a few restrictions. He then walked 2 steps forwards and removed some seals before walking another few steps forward. He took out a talisman treasure. This was a squarish paper treasure with 14 sides and 24 corners, which was formed by overlapping runes. When vital chi entered it, the talisman treasure would float up and gradually light up. When that talisman treasure lighted up, it started to spin continuously and shone out the runes on each side into the air. Donghua instantly saw that in front of them, the transparent air gradually started to change and became numerous translucent squares. Inside each cube, there was a person who was as big as a fist, looking very fiendish. The people paced around inside the cubes agitatedly, as if they wanted to jump out and eat humans. Queer restrictions. Donghua looked at these fiendish tiny figurines and his heart leaped. Every single tiny figurine was refined using the souls of strong practitioners. Therefore they were all extremely strong and only knew how to kill. Meanwhile, these strange cubes formed an incomparably complicated lock. With runes shining on it, as long as the pattern of the runes were correct, could the lock be open, otherwise they would let out these tiny figurines. There were countless translucent figurines, and every time the runes shown out by the talisman treasure hit a cube, the cube would move back automatically and disappear. The steps to unlocking the restrictions are so complicated. It's hard to do so without this talisman treasure. The talisman treasure continued to spin, and the runes shown out by all 14 sides were also ever-changing, causing the cubes in front of them to move back one by one. The talisman treasure floated forward and the tortoise-back guard walked forward. Donghua quickly followed up and walked through a very long passage. Suddenly, he saw a wide clearing in front of his eyes. It was a completely different world inside the Golden Palace Hall. From the outside, this Golden Palace Hall wasn't that big, but from the inside it was minimally 10 times larger. There were pillars lined up after one another, which were followed by golden altars of all shapes and sizes. On each golden altar, there was a queer-shaped treasure placed on it. The tortoise-back guard brought Junior Protector Sword, smiling as he walked forward. This kind of precious treasure must definitely be placed in the deepest and most prestigious location. My powers are not enough to seal it, so we can only wait for Grand Shaman to come forward and seal it personally. Donghua, you have done a great deed, even I'm envious of you. Donghua smiled at once. I had not only received a treasure from that person of eternal peace, I have also received a small jade bottle, and it's most likely a sacred medicine inside. I took a sniff and it was heavenly, as if I was going to turn into an immortal. He took out a small jade bottle from his sleeves, and the eyes of the tortoise-back guard lit up when he saw it. Snatching it over, he smiled. Donghua, now that you have done a great deed, Grand Shaman will definitely reward you. Since I have brought you here in advance to choose your treasure, how can you not give presents to me? I shall take the sacred medicine in this jade bottle. Donghua gave a pained expression. The tortoise-back guard saw his pained expression and smiled. Stingy. After he had said it, he opened up the jade bottle and gave it a sniff. How fragrant. A smile remained on the face of the tortoise-back guard as he collapsed stiffly. Donghua held his breath and immediately snatched the jade bottle over and stuffed the cork back, not daring to take in a single sniff. He gave some thought and took out another jade bottle and collected all the air in the surroundings into the jade bottle before opening up the mouth of the tortoise-back guard. He placed the jade bottle without a stopper into his mouth and kept it there. This way he won't be able to wake up anytime soon. Phew. Donghua let out a murky breath and started to shed his skin. Another human came out from Donghua's skin, and it was Qin Mu. Now I could be considered to have used the methods of the devil path. Qin Mu looked at the skin on the ground and shook his head. Granny C could wear other people's skin and change constantly, however. He was still a little traumatized by it. Qin Mu took back Junior Protector Sword. He flipped around the tortoise-back guard's body to find that talisman treasure and stuffed it into his shirt. He then found some scattered items. After flipping around and not finding anything useful, he could only leave it at that. Heaven's eyes awaken. Green Heaven's eyes awaken. Heaven's Eyes and Green Heaven's Eyes opened up in Qin Mu's pupils, and the densely packed runes formed 2 layers of heavens in his pupils. He looked around and everything here became clear in his eyes. Every golden altar here was covered in seal, which was similar to the cube he had seen earlier. In every cube, there was a tiny figurine which looked fierce, and these tiny figurines had their faces all warped and twisted. They grew messy hairs, razor-sharp teeth and claws, and if Qin Mu didn't use his Heaven's Eyes, he wouldn't have been able to see it. Qin Mu held up that talisman treasure and carefully sized up the runes on the 14 sides of the cube, and made some comparison before shaking his head. This talisman treasure wasn't the key to unlock these golden altars, and most probably could only open this palace hall. He walked forward and looked at the golden altars one after another. He needed to act quickly as Ling Yuxiu should still be blocking the gate outside. Ling Yuxiu's ability was a level lower than him, and despite learning the fusion of Chancellor Ba Shan's battle spells, she most probably couldn't hold on for a long period of time. There were all kinds of treasures on the golden altars, and many of them were treasures unique to Roland's golden palace that were created strangely. There were some human skins that were used as canvases for painting and runes writing. There were some treasures that used skulls to make into alms bowl, human skins to make drums, as well as white bone banner, 1,000 venom souls devouring banner, white bone shrine. These were all magical artifacts used by heterodox doctrines. Other than that, there were also quite some good items that were shining brilliantly in a golden glow. These items seemed to be treasures created by the ones on the level of the Shaman King. Qin Mu also saw some treasures that were not from the shaman cult were also placed here. There were 1,000 streamers, pagoda, sariras, which were precious treasures of Buddhism. There were also a grape-sized sword pellet, a guqin which got burned at one end, and a broken sword. Suddenly, Qin Mu stopped and couldn't move his feet away. There was a stone tablet erected on this golden altar, and on the stone tablet was the incomplete diagram of a circulation technique. He knew it was the circulation diagram of Overlord Body 3 elixir technique with one look. However, it wasn't the circulation diagram of 6 directions realm. In his hurry, he couldn't determine which realm it was. Go, I have to find the legs. Qin Mu hurried and sprinted to the deepest end of this treasury. After a moment, he had explored the entire treasury once and stopped before a golden altar. He had already seen this golden altar once, however, he had still chosen to return here. There was a lower body of a person placed on this golden altar. It was the portion of the body that was below the waist, however, it was still standing steadily. However, Qin Mu was sure that it wasn't the lower body of Butcher. This lower body was shining brilliantly in a golden glow, and even its blood seemed to be a golden liquid, as well as the golden bones. This body gave off a terrifying aura which was even stronger than the Shaman King's. The body of Grand Shaman? Qin Mu blinked his eyes and gestured around his waist before thinking back about Butcher's body. It seemed like Butcher's body could be completely placed on top of this lower body. Grand Shaman exterminated that sect that had snatched Grandpa Butcher's lower body and seized his lower body. Grand Shaman then severed the lower half of his body and placed it here, while Grandpa Butcher's lower body, which should be here, had disappeared. The corner of Qin Mu's eyes twitched, and he thought of a frightening possibility. Grand Shaman had severed his lower body and attached Butcher's lower body to his body. With my medical expertise, I'm completely able to do this. Grand Shaman should be able to do this too. His scalp can't help turning numb. Severing one's own lower body to attach someone else's lower body. What's the intention of Grand Shaman? Maybe he thought that Grandpa Butcher's body was more powerful than his body of gold, which was something he could never attain in his entire lifetime. Therefore, he had swapped the lower half of his body. However, there could be another possibility. That is, Grand Shaman had used Grandpa Butcher's lower body to refine it into a spirit weapon with 2 legs. Qin Mu had a queer expression. The possibility of the latter was very small, but it's not impossible. He can't help revealing a distressed expression. The lower body on the golden altar also had seals, and if he stretched his hand over, his hand would definitely be eaten clean by those tiny figurines in the cubes. If Chancellor Ba Shan was here, he could just destroy these seals with his brute force, but Qin Mu didn't have this kind of ability. Grandpa Cripple had taught me heaven pilfering sun switching hands, but I never used it before. Could I pass through the seals and grab that lower body? His heart became worried, and he suddenly started sprinting in this treasury. executing heaven-pilfering divine legs that Cripple had imparted to him. His speed was like a flickering shadow, so fast that even naked eyes can't catch it. Qin sprinted and executed heaven-pilfering sun-switching hands, causing his hands to move faster and faster like lightning. Cripple's effort was all spent on his hands and legs. His legs running fast was to escape for his life after being discovered stealing. His hands were fast because he could steal stuff. Qin had always been cultivating heaven-pilfering leg skill diligently, however. He had practiced heaven-pilfering sun-switching hands much lesser. Now that he was making a last-minute effort, he hoped he could comprehend more marvel of it. When he executed heaven-pilfering divine legs and heaven-pilfering sun-switching hands at the same time, Qin instantly noticed something wonderful and couldn't help crying out in surprise, stopping immediately. By executing two different skills at the same time, he actually felt that these two kinds of skills were actually one. It was just that Cripple had taught him this skill by splitting them into two parts. Originally, he had already felt extremely smooth and unhindered when he cultivated heaven-pilfering divine legs, whereas now that he had executed both of them now, the speed of his vital qi circulation had increased several times. That the speed of vital qi circulation increased several times meant that the speed he moved his hands and legs could be increased by several times. Qin composed himself and looked forward. The interior of the Golden Palace Hall's treasury was very spacious, having enough space for him to sprint. He suddenly exerted the strength in his legs and sprinted forward as if he was flying. The air in the palace hall gave off a tearing whistle and suddenly a bang was heard. Qin had mercilessly crashed into the wall of the palace hall, which was 300 yards away from his starting point. He then collapsed backward stiffly. Around his body, a ring of white gas rose and dispersed. After a moment, Qin stood up and shook his head. He exerted his strength again and another bang was created as a ring of white gas dispersed around his body. However, this time he didn't bang into the wall and had run up the wall and then up across the ceiling with a whoosh. The tearing sound whooshed endlessly and Qin stepped on the air in this treasury, and whooshed over before whooshing back in a blink of an eye. Suddenly, during his frantic sprinting, he stretched his hand out and plucked. A golden altar became empty and on Qin hand, there was an alms bowl made from the top of a skull. Clank! The alms bowl landed on the ground and Qin laughed out loudly. He let loose and sprinted as he stretched his hands only like a shooting light towards the golden altars beside his body. The golden altars got emptied out one by one, and the treasures were strewn all over the floor. After a moment, all the golden altars were swept clean by him and Qin hugged a pair of legs as he passed by a golden altar. His body suddenly halted and he placed the golden lower body down. No wonder Grandpa Cripple likes to steal stuff, so as it turns out, stealing is actually so refreshing. The youth of disabled elderly village let out a murky breath and looked at the treasure strewn all over on the floor, exclaiming in a refreshed tone, "Even if one leg was cut down, it's still worth it." Qin suddenly came to the realization that his idea was very dangerous. That was how Cripple's leg was lost. Even though he always wore a smile on his face, he always sighed in secret and wanted to find back his leg yet didn't dare to. If he sank into the maniac stealing behavior that Cripple had before he was crippled, he would probably end up like him very soon. This kind of taste may be refreshing, but it's best to do lesser of it. Qin warned himself and looked at all the treasures strewn on the floor. Other than the evil treasure created by Roland's Golden Palace, he wanted to bring everything else away, but the number of things he could bring was limited. This sword pellet must be something good for them to place it here. Qin picked up the sword pellet, which was very heavy, and reckoned there must be numerous treasure swords sealed inside. His vital qi slowly entered the pellet and he heard a hum coming from the sword pellet, as a curved knife flew out and slowly spun half a cycle in front of him. "It's not a sword pellet, it's a knife pellet." Qin was astonished. He had once seen this kind of knife pellets from the rebel army of Barbarian D Empire. The rebel army had used them to bombard Chancellor Bashan's Heavenly Spirits escarpment, which ended up in over tens of thousands of knives stuck on Heavenly Spirits escarpment that couldn't be taken back. This was why Torimu was able to slay the rebel army with ease. Qin picked up a curved knife and he couldn't use it easily, therefore, he reckoned that a special technique was needed to activate it. However, the quality of this curved knife was much better than the rebel army's curved knives. The quality wasn't inferior to his pig slaughtering knife. He retracted his vital chi back and the curved blade returned into the knife pellet with a clink, vanishing with a trace. There was an extremely large amount of curved knives in the knife pellet, thus it was definitely a huge killing weapon. Qin Mu then picked up that broken sword. He couldn't feel any power in the broken sword, which seemed powerless and light when he held it in his hand. Qin Mu opened his heaven's eyes and green heaven's eyes to size it up carefully. However, he didn't see anything from it. Then again, for Roland's golden palace to place it in such an important treasury, there must be something extraordinary about it, thus he kept it as well. The guqin had one end burnt, which Qin Mu deduced to be the mark of a lightning strike after taking a look at it. That's not right. There's a baleful and demonic air from this guqin. Qin Mu looked at it in detail and felt more and more strange. That was a baleful aura from the guqin, as if there were dense blood and qi pulsing in it. Meanwhile, the demon aura was also incomparably dense. This guqin didn't seem like a guqin but more like an incomparably terrifying great demon. Could it be a tree spirit that had cultivated into a demon and got turned into a guqin by someone? Good stuff, going to take it away as well. Qin Mu carried the guqin on his back and picked up the bones of a hand. Just as he grabbed it, Qin Mu felt as if he was struck by thunder. His body trembled involuntarily, and a loud and resounding voice exploded in his mind. God language! Qin Mu's expression hugely changed and immediately threw the bones of the hand away. That voice had spoken the God language, and when he had held it in his hand, there seemed to be a god appearing in his head. When he plucked this bones of the hand from the golden altar just now, he had thrown it away straight after. Now then he knew what a right decision it was for him to throw away these bones of the hand. These bones are very strange. Could it be the hand of a god? He composed his mind and pulled out Junior Protector Sword to flick these bones up. He then took a sack from the ground and placed the bones of the hand into it. Thousand Streamers Pagoda of Buddhism is also good stuff, though it's a little too big. Qin Mu sized Thousand Streamers Pagoda up and down. Each streamer of Thousand Streamers Pagoda was very exquisite and only 3 inches long. However, with 1,000 streamers stabbing elaborating into the shape of a pagoda, it was very huge. Reaching the height of several yards, it would definitely be eye-catching if he was to carry it out on his back. He picked up those few sariras and stuffed them into the sack. He then found a few jade pearls and also threw them into the sack. When Qin Mu also threw the knife pellet into the sack, only then did he feel something was amiss. The knife pellet was very heavy. However, when it went into the sack, he couldn't feel any weight of the knife pellet. He picked up the sack and flipped it around several times to take a closer look. This sack was also one of the treasures sealed on the golden altar, which he had no idea what material it was made from and what use it had. There was a strange beast embroidered on one side of the sack, which was opening its mouth wide open. The mouth of the strange beast, and precisely at the position of the sack's opening. He opened his sack to look inside and saw a few items that were about the size of a sesame. They were the treasures which he had thrown in earlier. Qin Mu was stunned. He poured out the hand bones of the god, sariras, knife pellets and the rest. When these items slid out of the sack, they were still of their original sizes and there was no change. Weird. Qin Mu opened up the sack's opening and put his head into the sack to take a look inside. He was shocked as he saw a space that had an area of 6 aries and a height of 6 to 7 yards. He pulled back his head and stretched his hand into the sack. With an arm inside, he still couldn't touch the bottom of the sack. Qin Mu pondered for a moment and placed the hand bones of the god, sariras, knife pellets and the rest back into the sack. He then placed the guqin into the sack, along with the 1,000 streamers pagoda. He then carried up that golden lower body and stuffed it into the sack as well. The youth then stood up and picked up everything that was on the floor and stuffed them into the sack, abandoning those that were too big to be able to stuff into the sack. A moment later, the sack started to bulge slightly and he could gradually feel some weight. However, it wasn't heavy. Qin Mu lowered his head and picked up the items which he had thrown away once more. He picked out a few pill cauldrons, and one of them was a sealed cauldron which was much bigger and valuable than the one in Imperial College. All that was left in this treasury were magical artifacts that were made by the shaman cult, using human bones. Qin Mu gave a sigh of relief and hung the sack at his waist, using his clothes to cover it. There's not much time left. I should go out to look for Sister Yushio and leave this place as soon as possible. The youth's heart thumped wildly and he tried to compose himself. After some calculations, he didn't wear back the human skin and instead took out his pig slaughtering knives and styled his hair to make him look like a disciple of the shaman cult. Qin Mu wore Dambaro's clothes and circulated the heavenly god creation technique of great educational heavenly devil scriptures. Minute changes started to happen to the color of his skins as it gave off a faint golden glow. With a look, he looked like a shaman of Roland's golden palace who had small attainments. Qin Mu flipped open the geographic map of Roland's golden palace and kept it back. His vital qi activated that talisman treasure, causing it to rise into the air. The runes lighted up one by one and shone toward the seals of the treasury's door. 12, 9, 6, 10, 7, 6, 7, 1. Qin Mu chanted numbers and every chant would cause the talisman treasure to spin in the air, shining one of the 14 sides to the seal. When he had entered this treasury, that tortoise-back guard had activated this talisman treasure to unseal the seals. The transformations of the talisman treasure were extremely complicated as it had 14 sides and on each side, there were different runes. It was very difficult for him if he wanted to memorize all these runes. However, memorizing the order of these runes was not complicated to Qin Mu. He had memorized the 14 sides of the talisman treasure as 14 numbers. He then reversed the order of the numbers when the tortoise-back guard had used to enter, solving the restrictions from inside. In front of him, the cubes appeared and moved back one after another as Qin Mu walked out. He finally walked out of the treasury without a hitch. Qin Mu gave a sigh of relief and took out Junior Protector Sword to smash the talisman treasure into pieces. He then walked towards the warehouse of Roland's Golden Palace, according to the directions given on the map. Even though Roland's Golden Palace was currently having their gate blocked, there was still a great shaman on duty in the warehouse. Qin Mu handed over a prescription and that great shaman read out, 2 maces of mock strawberry, 1 tail 6 maces of sacred bamboo, 4 maces of oleander. So many herbs, are you preparing to refine out a great medicine? Qin Mu nodded his head and smiled honestly. I was injured just now, so I'm preparing to supplement myself. You have fought that fellow blocking the gate? I have also heard about it. Many people had died. Luckily that fellow has already been killed, so it still isn't that humiliating. It was really humiliating back when Marshal Khan had blocked the gate. That great shaman prepared the herbs and Qin Mu handed Dambaro's coin pouch over to him. Is there fresh figs formed by crimson pearl grass? Give me 4 figs. This item is very expensive, so how can we have fresh ones? Do you want dried ones? Dried ones are fine too. That great shaman brought over dried figs and Qin Mu took one to put into his mouth. That great shaman saw that he was simple and honest, so he secretly took out a few more coins from his coin pouch and was secretly gleeful. Qin Mu's expression changed and shouted, "You overcharged me." That great shaman's expression changed and retorted angrily, "I didn't do that. You're slandering me." Qin Mu pulled into his coin pouch and said, "I know how much money I have in my coin pouch. I would know if you have overcharged me. I'm going to report this to the Shaman King." That great shaman immediately pulled back the coin pouch, and when they were both tugging on it, a jade bottle accidentally fell into the warehouse and smashed into pieces. "Don't report it to the shaman." Before the great shaman could finish saying his words, he suddenly collapsed. A fragrant scent spread out in the warehouse, and the other few shamans in the warehouse who were coming over after they heard the commotion collapsed onto the floor before they could even get near. Qin Mu threw the coin pouch into the warehouse, which landed on the body of that great shaman. He then carefully looked into the sack hanging on his waist and picked out a cauldron. It was that sealed cauldron which he had found in the treasury. "I have added 10 times the amount to lost fragrance this time. I don't believe I can't paralyze the entire Roland's Golden Palace." He placed the herbs into the cauldron and his vital qi burst forth to circle around this cauldron rapidly. His hand techniques were ever-changing and dazzling to the eyes. After a while, he had finished refining lost fragrance in the cauldron. However, the vital qi on Qin Mu's palm still continued to burst forth with blazing flames. He didn't use black tortoise vital qi to cool it down like he did previously, and instead, burned more and more furiously. After a moment, Qin Mu stopped and opened the cauldron's lid. Pink smoke started to surge out from the furnace and spread in all directions. If not for the crimson pearl fig in his mouth, which could negate the medicinal effects of lost fragrance, he would have felt his limbs vanishing. He immediately held his breath and saw the smoke continuing to surge out from the cauldron. Qin Mu's vital qi transformed into green dragon vital qi, and he executed the wind-calling spells and great educational heavenly devil scriptures to disperse the smoke. Soon, the gust had spread lost fragrance throughout the entire mountain. He immediately rushed to a golden palace hall and carried his backpack. Securing his knives, iron hammer, he threw his sword case aside as he rushed to the direction of the mountain gate. His vital qi transformed into black tortoise vital qi, and formed a ball of water vapor which then turned into a ball of water. Qin Mu placed the remaining 3 crimson pearl figs into the balls of water and sprinted. With one hand holding up the 3 balls of water, his other hand moved like a phantom. With his fingers moving up and down in different hand techniques, he tapped on the balls of water to hasten the medicinal energy of the crimson pearl figs. That 3 figs absorbed the water and soon became plump, with their medicinal energy aroused by him. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief and suddenly, golden lights rose into the sky and hurriedly flew away. They should be the few shaman kings who were guarding in front of the sacred hall, panicking and escaping Roland's golden palace after they had seen the disciples on the entire mountain, dying from being poisoned. Dead, they're all dead. A loud and resounding voice carried terror and panic as disappeared in the distance. Qin Mu pushed his speed to the maximum and sprinted down the mountain. He saw the Green Bull, Hu Linger and Ling Yuxiu all lying on the ground. There were wounds all over Ling Yuxiu's body and she was stained with blood. He immediately stuffed a crimson pearl fig into each of their mouths and they slowly woke up. However, they still felt slightly numb, along with their souls and spirit embryos that were also slightly sore. They had no idea what had just happened. Lost fragrance can scare the shaman kings away, but it can't knock them out. Qin Mu spoke quickly. I'm afraid there are a few existences that are comparable to Chancellor Ba Shan in Roland's Golden Palace, who would rush here immediately after receiving the news. We need to leave immediately. Ling Yuxiu stood up unsteadily and the green bull also swayed its heavy head. Qin Mu carried the little fox up and stuffed her into his backpack. With one hand pulling onto Ling Yuxiu and the other hand pulling onto the green bull, he rushed down the mountain. Ling Yuxiu was still in a dazed state. She gave him a silly smile and said, "Cowherd, you're still alive." Qin Mu turned a deaf ear to her and rushed all the way down the mountain. He was so fast that Ling Yuxiu and the green bull couldn't catch up with his pace and started to float up. When they came to the bottom of the mountain, Qin Mu looked towards the wooden boat and the goat-faced great shaman was also paralyzed with his head in the water and his butt sticking up to the sky. With half of his body left on the boat, he should have already drowned. Qin Mu quickly got up on the boat and flipped the goat-faced great shaman's legs over, throwing him into the water. He pushed the bamboo pole but the boat didn't move at all. Qin Mu pushed the bamboo pole a few times more but the boat remained motionless. There's no buoyancy in the weak waters. Qin Mu instantly came to a realization. He poured in vital qi into the bamboo pole, and strange markings appeared on the bamboo pole. Now when he pushed the weak waters, he actually felt a resistance from the water. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief and immediately pushed the bamboo pole to sail towards the other side of the shore. Even though this wooden boat was pushed forward like an arrow that had left the bow, he still found it too slow. If the Shaman Kings and Grand Shaman of Roland's Golden Palace returned to the mountain, they could probably detoxify lost fragrance immediately, and know that these people were only paralyzed and not poisoned. If they were to give chase now, Qin Mu and the rest would face an incomparably miserable end. When they finally reached the other side of the shore, the green bull returned to his senses and immediately shouted, "Old Master is still on the mountain." Qin Mu said, "Don't worry, if we can escape, he can as well. He is much stronger than us. If we go and look for him, we'll be his burden instead." Furthermore, when Grand Shaman and the Shaman Kings returned to Roland's Golden Palace to investigate, that would give Chancellor Ba Shan a chance to escape. He jumped onto the shore and stretched out his hand. However, Ling Yuxiu and the Green Bull had already jumped over as well and didn't need him to support. That Crimson Pearl Fig had allowed them to completely recover. Crimson Pearl Fig was indeed the antidote for lost fragrance. Lost fragrance was originally what apothecary used to paralyze a dragon. That dragon had an extremely strong ability which was comparable to a strong practitioner of celestial being realm, yet it was paralyzed by apothecary. The only bane of this anesthetic was Crimson Pearl Fig. Green Bull. Qin Mu gave a shout and the green bull understood his intention. He instantly pronated on the ground and revealed his true form, turning into a huge and majestic green bull that was riding on the wind and clouds. Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu jumped on the back of the bull and said, "Green bull, run as fast as you can." The hooves of the green bull moved and his hooves didn't touch the ground as he sprinted on the wind and clouds. The two people on the back of the bull felt extreme pain as the strong wind bombarded them in their faces. On Qin Mu's back, Hu Linger had woken up and was almost blown away by the wind when she stuck her head out to have a look. She immediately grabbed the backpack and her body was already blown out from the backpack, the strong wind pulling her tail and body straight like a pencil. The green bull's hooves raised up and down, and every time his hooves were a foot away from the ground, wind would surge out from his hooves and pushed his huge body upwards, making his speed extremely fast. Qin Mu turned his head back and his hair was all messed up. His hairstyle was like shaman and had no band to tie it up. Only then did he notice Hu Linger, who was grabbing onto the backpack with her two paws. Her body was blown straight by the wind and he immediately grabbed her so she didn't get blown away by the wind. Ling Yuxiu shouted, "Cowherd, let me carry her so you can tidy your hair." Qin Mu handed Hu Linger over to her, and Ling Yuxiu carried Hu Linger in her arms. Hu Linger gave a humph when she felt her chest was soft and fragrant. Even though she wasn't happy, she was very comfortable and couldn't resist giving one or two nudges she felt torn. Qin Mu took out a headband and tied up his hair, taking a look back from time to time. He saw that the distance between them and Roland's golden palace was growing greater and greater. He could still faintly see the golden lights flying from the snow mountain towards Roland's golden palace at a steady pace. Those golden lights may not look fast, but they were actually extremely fast, reaching Roland's golden palace in just a breath's time. After a moment, the few golden lights flew out from Roland's golden palace towards their directions. Qin Mu's heart sank. Those few golden lights should be the shaman kings of Roland's golden palace, who had discovered their trials and was currently chasing over. Even though the green bull's speed was extremely fast, his cultivation couldn't be compared to the shaman kings. However, at this moment, a bright light rose up and intercepted those few golden lights. The few rays of light collided in the sky and separated before colliding again. From the distance where Qin Mu was at, the speed of the few rays wasn't fast, but if one looked at them from a close distance, they would be so fast that no one could see them clearly. Those few rays collided a few times with the white light and suddenly a ball of light exploded, following up with a trail of black smoke appearing in the sky which formed a skull. The skull spewed out few trails of black smoke from its mouth, and each trail of black smoke turned into a skull. With this happening thrice in a row, the entire sky was filled with skulls. The shapes of the skulls could be seen from so far. They must be incomparably gigantic if he saw them up close. They must be as astonishing as mountains. Then Qin Mu saw a knife cutting across the vast sky, and a ray of golden light suddenly broke among the few golden lights. The green bull ran faster and faster. Soon Qin Mu couldn't see the battle clearly anymore. When the green bull had sprinted by another few mountains, he totally couldn't see anything. As the sun set in the west, the sky gradually darkened. The green bull ran for half a day and panted with exhaustion as his mouth started to foam. Seeing a pond on the prairie ahead, he immediately ran over and gulped down the water. Not long later, half of the water in the pond had disappeared. The green color backs of the fish could be seen at the shallow parts of the pond as a few foot-long fish squirmed their bodies in the mud, trying to crawl to the places with more water. Qin Mu saw him being unbearably tired and jumped down from the bull's back. "Green bull, stop running and rest for a while." The green bull hasn't drunk to his content, and at this moment, an elderly voice sounded out. "That bull, stop drinking. If you drink some more, you'll drink all of the water for our village." The green bull raised his head, and an elderly herder passed by here and abandoned his flock of sheep in a hurry to rush over. He tried to swing his whip to chase the green bull away, but when he saw the green bull being terrifyingly huge, he didn't dare to get close and swung his whip from afar. Shoo shoo. Qin Mu patted on the bull's hoof as this green bull had revealed his true form, which was incomparably tall and sturdy. Qin Mu was only as tall as his ankle, so he could only pat the bull's hoof. The green bull immediately stopped drinking while Ling Yuxiu hurriedly jumped down from the back of the bull. Hu Linger also squirmed out from her embrace and jumped on Qin Mu's backpack. That elder dared not come forward, and the green bull squirmed his body to shrink his body size. standing up like a human. He was also 2 to 3 persons tall. Swinging his tail, he swatted a few gadflies to death. Qin greeted from afar and said, "Elder, we are passing by and the sky is about to turn dark, therefore we had stopped for a rest. This journey has really been tiring and we're really thirsty, so my bull has drunk slightly more. I do beg your pardon." That elder went forward and raised his head to look at the green bull while letting out a sigh of exclamation. He was still slightly afraid. "Your bull sure is well fed, growing to be so sturdy. How come this bull is green in color?" Qin smiled. "He's a mixed dragon breed, therefore it's green in color." That elder wanted to touch yet was afraid to touch. Mustering his courage, he came to the bull's side and gave it a touch. He felt that his skin was like satin while his muscles were like iron and exclaimed, "His muscles sure are sturdy. We also have a few cows in our village. Can he be used for breeding?" The green bull was unhappy and said, "Elder, I'm not a breeding cattle, so I won't breed. My heart is already taken." That elder jumped in shock and muttered, "Demon!" Qin immediately said, "He's not a demon." Hu Linger stuck her head out. "I'm a demon." That elder suddenly saw the light and smiled at Qin and Ling Yuxiu. "I know you must have escaped from a rich family, am I right? Only rich family can afford to raise a strange beast and a fox immortal. The sky is turning dark. How about coming to our village to take a rest?" Qin hesitated for a moment and looked at Ling Yuxiu. Ling Yuxiu said softly, "The green bull is exhausted and can't run anymore." Qin frowned. "If Roland's golden palace was to catch up, I'm afraid we would implicate them." Ling Yuxiu said softly, "The green bull has always traveled on the wind and clouds, not leaving any traces, so it would be hard for them to find us. How about this, if their village is quite hidden, we can stay there for the night. If it's very eye-catching, we'll be on our way." Qin nodded his head and said, "Elder, in that case we'll have to bother you for tonight. We will continue on our way the next morning." The elder smiled. "It's not a problem if you want to stay for a few more days. There aren't many people in our village as well. They are all old folks who come closer to death with every passing day. Your body is pretty sturdy. Help me herd the sheep." Qin went forward and his body technique was extremely fast. He soon chased the flock of sheep together and the elder's eyes lighted up. "Young lady, you have great eyesight. This young man is sturdy and capable." Ling Yuxiu's face turned red. "Elder, it's not what you think it is." That elder laughed loudly and brought them along to chase the flock of sheep. Walking around a call, they came to a small village in the forest. This village wasn't huge and there were only 20 buildings. However, most of them were empty as there were only over 10 elderly people staying there. The forest was very secluded and the trees were tall and huge as no one was able to trim them, resulting in the trees covering the small village. "Why are there so few people here?" Qin put his heart at ease and asked puzzledly. "The few cons fight every day, with you killing me and I killing you. You grab some able-bodied men, I grab some able-bodied men. As they grab and grab, the people get lesser." That elder sighed and said, "Those capable ones in the village have all moved out and only us elderly are left. We can't move even if we want to. Where can we move to? It's lucky they did not touch us old bones when grabbing away the able-bodied men during these few years. Darling, there are visitors." An old granny who was mending clothes stood up shakily and smiled. "There are visitors? I'll prepare some food." Qin immediately said, "Let me do it. I have frequently prepared meals when I was back at the village." That old granny couldn't win him, and could only watch him cook up dishes along with the elder. Ling Yuxiu hurriedly went forward to invite the 2 old people to sit down. "Where are they from?" The old granny beamed. That elder blinked his eyes and stuck his 2 thumbs to do a kissing action. "Ran away from a rich family, a young couple eloping." Ling Yuxiu's face turned red from embarrassment and protested softly, "It's not like that, we're innocent. We've all been through that, so we understand. The young lady is thin-skinned." The old granny sized her up and revealed a few loose teeth as she smiled. "The young lady is good, sturdy body with big bosoms and buttocks. This young man has quite a blessing." The elder smiled. "The young man is good as well, pretty sturdy too. He is also very honest and not overbearing. When he saw the old and frail me, he was also very polite." The old granny continued, "You 2 should return home after eloping for a year or 2. Give birth to a baby and bring the baby back. Even if your family doesn't approve, they would have no choice. Ling Yuxiu kept nodding her head and her heart was restless, as she didn't know how to continue the conversation. She thought to herself, if I was to give birth to a baby with cowherd, won't my father die from anger? Bah, father won't die from anger, but he will definitely behead him. Touch wood, touch wood. After a moment, the fragrance of the dishes floated out and Ling Yuxiu hurried forward to help serve the dishes. When they finished their meals, the sky had turned completely dark. There were only old folks in the entire village, so they only lighted oil lamps before turning in for bed. Qin Mu helped this two elderly wash their cutleries and that elder said, there are many empty houses in the village, you can just choose one to live in. Qin Mu gave his thanks and walked into an empty residence. Hu Linger helped to tidy up 3 rooms and calculated to herself, Green Bull will take 1 room, Plump Bosom Vixen will take 1 room, me and Young Master will take 1 room. 3 rooms, no problem. Suddenly Qin Mu had a feeling and raised his head up to look at the sky. He saw 2 stars moving from the west in the sky and hurriedly said, everyone, get in. Ling Yuxiu, the Green Bull, and Hu Linger hurriedly entered the house, and just as they entered, they heard a hum as 2 thick light pillars came landing down, lighting up the entire village as if it was in the day. Those 2 rays were visions, and the owner of these visions was flying in the sky and surveying the prairie. The 2 visions shone downwards, lighting up the prairie in a golden glow. The visions swept past this small village at the foot of the mountain before leaving in the distance. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief and opened the door to look up to the sky. He saw the 2 stars shining pillars of light along their way, which covered a radius of 2 to 3 miles as they went further and further away. I wonder how his senior brother Ba Shan doing. He was indeed a little worried. The people who had just passed by should be the strong practitioners of Roland's Golden Palace on the level of the Shaman Kings. As they searched their way over, this Shaman King didn't discover this village because the Green Bull did not leave any trails and there were no lamps lighted up in this hidden in the forest village. People here were all elderly people, and they all went to bed very early. However, for this Shaman King to be able to come search for them, it meant that Chancellor Ba Shan couldn't stop him, which could most likely be either Chancellor Ba Shan was injured or he was being surrounded. Let's go to sleep. Qin Mu threw a small jade bottle to Ling Yuxiu and said, sister, dragon's saliva is surprisingly effective to the wounds on your body. You should smear some on your body first before turning into bed. We'll leave immediately in the morning. Ling Yuxiu nodded her head and went into the room. After a moment, this girl opened the door and popped her head out. With her beautiful black hair hanging down in the front of her chest, she revealed half of her smooth shoulder with the rest of her body hidden behind the door. She said shyly, cowherd, there are some places which I can't see, so it's inconvenient for me to smear. I'll help you. Hu Linger rushed over excitedly and smiled. I'll help you smear, there's no need to bother, young master. It was a night without words. The next day before daybreak, Qin Mu got up to do some stretching. The elderly in the village got up too, and the sound of feeding chickens could be heard. There were also sounds of people chasing the sheep out of the sheep's pen, sounds of elderly greeting each other. For a moment, Qin Mu thought he had returned to disabled elderly village in great ruins. Little couple, have you woken up? Breakfast is ready, you can come to my house to eat. The old granny's voice came from outside. Qin Mu acknowledged and proceeded to wake up Ling Yuxiu and the Green Bull before carrying Hu Linger out from the bed to walk out of this dilapidated house. At this moment, a voice came from outside the village. There's a village here, let us ask for directions. Ask for what directions? It's impossible for me to be lost. A voice which was brimming with anger sneered. I've been there before and blocked the gate for 100 days, how could I be lost? Qin Mu was stunned and gave an unbelievable look. As he rushed to the village's entrance at once. There's no harm in asking. You said you remembered the way, yet we ended up walking round and round the prairie for such a long time. I'm not like cripple that wretch who can run so fast. Qin Mu came to the village's entrance with quick steps and saw a blind man walking over with a bamboo cane. Beside him was a half-body old man with a stubbly beard, carrying 2 pig slaughtering knives on his back, making him look fiendish. Qin Mu was surprised and delighted. He hurriedly ran over and tightly hugged the half-body old man up without explanation. He then threw the half-body old man aside and tightly hugged the dry and thin old man. Butcher, haven't I said we went the wrong way? That blind man immediately turned his head away to avoid Qin Mu. He struggled and looked at the stupefied butcher who was thrown in one corner. You brought me to the region beyond the Great Wall and look what happened? You brought me back to great ruins. We're back at our village. Mu or let go, I'm going to suffocate. Where's village chief? Is Granny back as well? Apothecary, stop hiding, I saw you. After a moment, Blind and Butcher greeted the elderly people in the village. When the elderly in the village saw that they were even older than them and disabled, they all admired endlessly and secretly exclaimed they were old yet strong. Ling Yuxiu came out from her room after she finished washing her hair and jumped in shock when she saw the two elders. She immediately ran back into her room with her heart thumping wildly. They are those two elders that scared me and little General Qin on Surging River that day. Qin Mu avoided all the elderly in the village and took out the sack on his waist. Pushing up the bottom of the sack, he reached in to rummage the items inside, pulling out 2 legs before tugging out the remaining half of the body and said, Grandpa Butcher, is this golden lower body the one you've lost? No. This isn't my body. Butcher took a careful look at this golden lower body and used his knife to give a slice after a moment. Touching the golden blood that was flowing out, he said suspiciously, This body seems to be Grand Shaman's. I had fought with this old brat once and I'm very familiar with his blood. This lower body is already more or less dead, making it useless. Qin Mu also went forward to touch the golden blood which had already half solidified. However, there was still a fire property hidden within it and a drop of blood was even squirming on his fingertip, trying to enter his body. Qin Mu immediately executed his vital qi and turned it into vermilion bird vital qi to burn it continuously. He spent quite a great effort before he could evaporate this drop of blood. Since it's the lower body of Grand Shaman, in that case, Grandpa Butcher's lower body should be on Grand Shaman. That old brat actually admires me to that extent? Butcher rubbed his beard, pleased with himself. In that case, are the sons he gave birth his sons or my sons? The beard stubble on his face was like iron spikes, giving off scratching sounds as his hand went over them. The more he thought, the more he became pleased with himself and couldn't help laughing out loud. Blind said neither too fast nor too slow. If he really gave birth to a son, or even a bunch of sons, are you going to acknowledge them? Butcher was stumped and his face turned bitter straight away. The pleased look he had earlier had totally vanished. With one sentence from Blind, Butcher became dazed. Blind then asked Qin Mu, Mu, why are you here? Qin Mu told them about the entire story and Blind cried out, You actually went to block the gate of Roland's Golden Palace? Pretty big guts. The reason I have accompanied Butcher out is also to go to Roland's Golden Palace. We have found out that Butcher's lower body was snatched away by Roland's Golden Palace. Butcher said even if we find it, he doesn't know if it could be reattached. Qin Mu smiled. If the lower body is dead, it's definitely impossible. But since Grandpa Butcher's lower body is on Grand Shaman's body, he definitely attached it to his body when it was still alive. As long as we find Grand Shaman and sever his lower body, I can help Grandpa Butcher reattach his body. Blind gave a smile and said, That's a small matter. Butcher, this wretch can finally be complete. He didn't even have a bird in the past. Butcher flew into a fury. I can transform my vital qi into my body. What do you mean I have no bird? I can pee and shit just fine. The two of them started to quarrel again, giving Qin Mu a headache. Qin Mu immediately said, Senior brother Bashan is still trapped in Roland's Golden Palace and his situation is unknown. Grandpa's. Butcher shook his head. No need to care about that rascal. He lacks a door on his mouth and blurted out anything and everything without ever stopping. I had met him in eternal peace and he still hadn't died from saying the wrong things. I dislike his nagging and was afraid of being annoyed by him, therefore, I had left. Even though he had said it that way, he had wanted to leave for Roland's Golden Palace immediately. He was still worried about the safety of Chancellor Bashan after all. Hu Linger and Ling Yuxiu had already finished packing up and Ling Yuxiu went to that old granny and elder's house to leave a few gold ingots. Even though they had only stayed for a night, they had received their hospitality. Furthermore, the elders in the village were all very old and have no young people in the village. Leaving some money for them would help them get through their later years. Butcher looked at Ling Yuxiu, clearly forgetting this 7th princess as he smiled. Rascal has good eyesight, this girl ain't half bad. Ling Yuxiu mustered her courage and went forward to greet him and blind. The green bull had run out in the morning to graze. He's not yet back. Let us go and find him. Everyone left the village and saw a huge green bull grazing on the grass of the prairie. As he grazed, his tears streamed down like rain while muttering, "Ever since I followed Old Master, I've always been eating vegetables and never grass. Old Master even built dozens areas of vegetable field to plant flowers for me." Hu Linger scampered forward and said, "Bull 2, stop crying. Your old master's old master is here. There's hope for your old master." The face of the green bull twitched when he saw Blind and Butcher, who was only left with his upper body, doubting their abilities. Everyone got on the back of the bull and Qin Mu said, "Don't worry, Green Bull, they are very powerful. Let us go to Roland's Golden Palace as soon as possible to save senior brother Ba Shan." The green bull could only sprint back on the way he came from. Ling Yuxiu looked back and the small village which was hidden in the forest already couldn't be seen. Those few elders had said that the few khans beyond the Great Wall are currently fighting each other. This means that the people beyond the Great Wall also feel threatened by the rise of Eternal Peace Empire. Ling Yuxiu composed herself and said, "They are also thinking of building a unified empire to gather all the strength to face Eternal Peace Empire. This Khan of Barbarian D Empire should be a great leader with a great ambition. If he was to unify the Great Wall, I'm afraid there would be trouble for our Eternal Peace Empire. Especially now that our Eternal Peace is frequently having civil unrest." Qin Mu nodded his head. This must be the intention of Roland's Golden Palace. Roland's Golden Palace is the sacred ground after all. If they support the Khan of Barbarian D Empire, it's not hard for them to unify the Great Wall. I reckon Roland's Golden Palace is also hesitant as they are scared of grooming another Eternal Peace Empire, making them lose control over the region beyond Great Wall. This is why Barbarian D Empire has yet to unify the region beyond Great Wall until now. Ling Yuxiu gave it some thoughts and it was indeed reasonable. However, the three biggest sacred grounds in Eternal Peace Empire, Dao Sect, Great Thunderclap Monastery, Heavenly Devil Cult did not support Eternal Peace Empire. Not only did they not support, there were still sects creating troubles for them. If Barbarian D Empire was to receive the full support from Roland's Golden Palace, they would probably have the power to invade Eternal Peace Empire. The green bull sprinted for almost half a day when Blind suddenly said, "Halt!" The green bull immediately halted. Blind pointed in the southwest direction and said, "Go over there. I can see people fighting over there." The green bull was bewildered. Blind saw people fighting over there? How did he see them? However, it was not good for him to question Blind, so he could only change his direction and sprinted southwest. Ling Yuxiu was also slightly puzzled and she looked at Qin Mu. Qin Mu explained, "Grandpa Blind has the best eyesight in our village." Blind was proud of himself. Ling Yuxiu looked at his eyes and saw his eye sockets being completely empty and had nothing inside, making her thought to herself, "Why is Blind the one with the best eyesight? What the logic in this?" Not long after the green bull had changed his direction, they suddenly saw a knife light cutting across a mountain. However, due to the long distance, they could only see weak rays. Only then did they admire Blind endlessly. Ling Yuxiu was between bewildered. "He really is blind?" Butcher also exclaimed, "Blind's eyesight is really good." Qin Mu knew the ability of Blind's godmind's eyes very well, therefore, he was long used to it. Even though Blind's eyes can't see, what he can see was much more than the others. He stood up and looked into the distance. There were still rays of golden light surrounding that mountain as they revolved around it. The green bull sprinted with all his might and got closer and closer to that mountain. Not long later, the rays of light became thicker and thicker as they floated to and fro around the mountain like streamers surrounding the mountain. When they got even closer, they could see numerous things in the golden lights. Those were the divine arts of the shaman kings, and there were curved knives hidden within the golden lights. In some golden lights there were golden humans and in others there were golden dragons rolling inside. The power of the shaman kings was astonishing and only shamans who had cultivated to celestial being realm could be known as shaman kings. However, Roland's Golden Palace was the sacred ground of the Great Wall after all. Those shaman kings that had given chase were mostly of life and death realm, and there was even a cult master level existence that was on divine bridge realm. The green bull sprinted forward and was only 3 miles away from that mountain. Qin took another look and saw that there was a Shaman King in each of the 8 directions around the mountain. The bird-head human body Shaman King on the east was holding onto a circular mirror. That mirror was strange and had 12 snow-white bones growing out from the mirror. With the mirror in his hand, a ray of golden light shone from the mirror. The leopard-head human body Shaman King on the west had a scepter in his hand. On the top of the scepter, there was something like a tail wrapping around the scepter which was currently moving. It was as long as the scepter. Meanwhile, on the tip of the scepter, there was a golden skull that was shooting out golden lights from its eyes. On the south side, there was a 3-headed golden man. He had 3 wolf's heads. On the north side, the Shaman King had a human head and 2 wings on his back. Golden swords continued to grow out from both of the wings and turned into sword currents which attacked towards the center of the mountain. Meanwhile, the Shaman Kings on the southeast, southwest, northeast, northwest were also of all shapes and sizes. There were some that grew a beast head and 8 arms, some that grew 6 legs, some that grew wings, some that grew more eyes and even had eyes on their palms. Even though Qin had seen Grand Shaman Ruda scriptures, he couldn't help exclaiming in admiration at the weirdness and power of this technique as he looked at such a scene. At the middle of the mountain, knife light slashed vertically and horizontally to block the divine arts that were coming in all directions. Huge rocks came falling down time to time from the top of the mountain. The rocks were as big as courtyard houses. In this situation, people couldn't recognize them clearly from far away. They could roughly see items like dust falling down, and only when they came close could they only know how huge those clouds of dust were. The mountain was already shaved into a bare pillar by the divine arts of Chancellor Ba Shan and the 8 Shaman Kings. Only the top of the mountain where Chancellor Ba Shan was standing on still had some greenery left. Butcher took a look and gave a sigh of relief before smiling. Big Mouth still isn't dead. Let us return. Qin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The green bull rushed forward with even more vigor. Before they had yet to reach the bottom of the mountain, Butcher suddenly rose into the air and a knife light split the sky with an incomparable brightness. Qin raised his head to take a look and felt that it turned darker after the light disappeared. It was as if the light was too bright and left a knife mark in their eyes, yet it also looked like it was too sharp and had sliced open the sky. He couldn't determine which one it was. Heaven Khan! An astonished cry sounded out as a human head fell from the sky. There was also a headless Shaman King still flapping his bird wings in the sky, shining his golden light everywhere. It was human head bird body Shaman King on the north. Among all of the Shaman Kings present, only he was the cult master level existence of Divine Bridge Realm, yet he was assassinated by Butcher when he closed in on him and killed him with a knife. Butcher was from the Battle Technique School, and one could well imagine what would happen if he closed in on someone. Butcher landed steadily on the back of the green bull and ordered it. Your old master is fine now. He'll just have to suffer a little more injuries and he will be able to slaughter his way out. Green Bull, bring us to Roland's Golden Palace. The Green Bull hesitated and asked, Aren't old master going to rescue old master? Old master always talked about how good you were. Why should I rescue him? For him to annoy me? Butcher shook his head. It was very peaceful for me when I stayed in the village for the past few years. When I think of getting nagged by this guy, my headache would act up. You should go as I ordered. If you continue to be long-winded, we'll have beef tonight. Do you know what's my job in the village? The Green Bull shuddered in fear and dared not to say a word. This bull was very clever and had long realized he was a butcher that slaughtered pigs and cows. Master! Chancellor Ba Shan's voice came from the mountaintop, and it was obvious he was injured since his breath was inadequate. He cried out in surprise. Master, it is you. I knew you didn't die. You had left me behind in eternal peace for so many years, and ran away yourself to live a carefree life. How are you going to make up to me? I have a lot of things to tell you. Quickly run, Butcher said. The Green Bull immediately ran towards the direction of Roland's Golden Palace. Chancellor Ba Shan was about to rush out of that mountain when he got suppressed by the other 7 Shaman Kings, making him have no choice but to go back to the mountain. The 7 Shaman Kings now felt they were holding a wolf by the ears. The 8 of them had worked together to suppress Chancellor Ba Shan and had decided to refine him to death. Never did they expect that Heaven Khan, who was rumored to have died many years ago, to resurface and killed the strongest Shaman King among them with a knife. They had originally thought that Heaven Khan would make a move on them, and Chancellor Ba Shan's spirits were raised as he used his strongest attacks to delay them, making them unable to run, scaring them out of their wits. And now, Heaven Khan had actually left Chancellor Ba Shan here and escaped on a bull. Chancellor Ba Shan was also at a total loss. Suddenly, he came to the realization and started to curse the old man. It took the green bull almost half a day to bring them back to the weak waters. Butcher looked at Blind and said, "Blind, you and Moor shall accompany me up the mountain. Now that my lower body is missing, I can't win that old fellow." "All right." Blind jumped down from the back of the bull. Qin Mu made Ling Yuxiu, Hu Linger and the green bull stay and said, "We'll be right back." Ling Yuxiu nodded her head. "Be careful." Butcher came to the front of the weak waters lake and shook his head. Ba Shan, this brat still hasn't improved after all these years. He couldn't even move this lake away. He took in a deep breath and the trio behind him couldn't help becoming dumbstruck. They saw the surroundings surging like a gathering storm towards this elder in front of them, who only had the upper half of his body. Even the clouds in the sky were swept over by the surging gale. The prairie had a high elevation and the clouds were much lower. Even so, they were also 10,000 feet above them, and this elder was so overpowered that he actually managed to suck all the white clouds in the sky into his stomach in one breath. This is the legendary strongest practitioner of the battle technique school. Ling Yuxiu's mind shuddered. Ever since Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor gathered all the strong practitioners of battle technique school to discuss Tao, the strong practitioners of the battle techniques had either died or escaped, and there were also some who went into seclusion. However, after that discourse, there were no more strong practitioners standing at the pinnacle of battle techniques. The flesh body was what battle technique school was strong in. There was a similar trait in all of the top battle techniques practitioners, which was one part of their bodies had already become a god. He had no need to deliberately execute divine art, as every motion they did was a divine art. It was obvious that this elder who only had his upper body was such an existence. Butcher took in a deep breath and completely sucked in all the clouds in the surroundings before giving out a blow. Whoosh! The weak waters lake in front of them was suddenly lifted up and the waves grew higher and higher as though a sea had become vertical. The vertical sea rapidly retreated and was literally blown into the snow mountains in an instant, filling up all the valleys in the snow mountains. In front of them, the lake was dried and even the bones in the lake were blown away. Even though the bottom of the lake was still slightly wet, there was no mud as the mud was scraped off cleanly. Qin Mu opened his heaven's eyes to have a look and he saw that the veil-covering lake had also vanished without a trace left from Butcher's breath. The top experts of the battle technique school didn't know the spell divine arts to change the land, but with such an incomparably strong body which could change the land and weather, why do they need spell divine arts? If one could have the body of the battle technique school, the sword mastery of sword control school and the divine arts of spells school, won't they be invincible? Qin Mu blinked his eyes and followed after Butcher. What he cultivated was Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique, and this technique was good in everything. It was just that this technique had no divine arts, no body refinement techniques, and no sword skills. It was also because he was cultivating Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique. Butcher didn't impart his body refinement technique to him so as not to hold back his advancement in cultivation. Actually, everyone in the village had his own unique technique, but none of them had taught it to him. Roland's Golden Palace broke into a commotion when they saw Butcher blowing away the weak waters lake in front of Roland's Golden Palace in a breath. How could such an unimaginably exceptional divine art not make the hearts of the Shaman Kings tremble? In front of the sacred hall, Grand Shaman stood there with his scepter. 2 rays of golden light shone out from his eyes and landed on the 3 people who were walking on the bottom of the lake, causing his eyes to twitch. He was the cult leader of the Golden Palace. Because he envied Butcher's strong body, after he knew Butcher got cut down by raising his knife towards the heavens, he infiltrated Eternal Peace and exterminated that small sect which had snatched Butcher's lower body. He knew very well that Butcher's body surpassed his body, therefore, he had cut off his own lower body without hesitation and attached Butcher's to his body. And now, his nightmare had turned into a reality. That Heaven Khan had not yet died. He had lived on and now he was coming for his lower body. The corners of Grand Shaman's eyes twitched furiously, and he turned to walk back into the sacred hall. In the hall, there were golden skeletons sitting on the shrines. There were human-shaped bones and there were also beast-shaped bones. There were a total of 18 shrines and 17 of them had golden skeletons in them. On the 18th shrine, there was a skin and bones elder with a messy appearance sitting on it as if he was dead. "Grandmaster, Heaven Khan is here." Grand Shaman leaned on his scepter and knelt down on one knee while lowering his head. That elder, who was as thin as a match, opened up his sharp eyes and his voice was like an owl. "Where's the sacred child of reincarnation which I asked you to find?" Golden sweats built up on Grand Shaman's golden forehead as he said tartly, "I haven't found him yet." That messy elder shouted with a sharp voice, "Without the sacred child of reincarnation, won't my reincarnation for the past 17 lifetimes be all for naught? I am only half a step from becoming God, half a step." Grand Shaman lowered his head deeply and didn't dare to say a word. That messy elder said sternly, "With me around, Heaven Knife won't dare to make things difficult for you, but I won't easily exhaust my life to help you. Return his lower body to him, and immediately find the sacred child of reincarnation for me." Grand Shaman was startled and suddenly, a flash passed his waist. It was too late for him to defend against. Grand Shaman kept silent for a moment before opening his mouth again. "Junior brother Gyatso, come in." A shaman king heard him and immediately came into the sacred hall before bowing. "Grand Shaman, what's the matter?" Grand Shaman picked up the scepter and poked through his head. He then severed his lower body and attached it to his own body. Without a ripple on his expression, he bowed and said, "Grandmaster, disciple asked to be excused."